to order this, the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority Board of Directors meeting on Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. We are operating this meeting under the executive order by the governor, which allows us in this time of COVID to do this via teleconferencing. We are using the Zoom platform. Members of the public may participate in this meeting via Zoom. They will be afforded opportunity to speak. Will be limited to 3 minutes. And at the appropriate times, the chair will ask members of the public to raise their hand to indicate their desire to speak. And with that, I'll check with the clerk that I didn't leave anything out.
No, you got it.
Okay, then we will call this meeting to order and we will get a roll call, please.
Thank you. Chair Miller,
Here.
Vice Chair Smith,
Here.
Gibbons,
Here.
Willie,
Aye.
thank you, no worries. Flagger,
Here.
Tyson,
Here.
Rennie,
Here.
Elahi,
Present.
Yulo.
Here.
Thank you. And I will note that currently absent are Montano, Abecoga, Ellenberg, and Tovar, but we do have a quorum.
Hey, is there any reason why we should pause for a second? Do we expect any of them to show up shortly?
We are expecting them, but if you'd like to proceed, you can.
Okay, we do have some special guests with us here tonight, also past board members. The next item on our agenda is a ceremonial item, a recognition item. And Girish and I have a few comments. Where's Girish? There we are. Before we start on this item. So this organization was born of 4 cities thinking that we could do better in the energy space. And well, 3 cities and a county. And I'm sure that those cities will speak to that when they get to that appropriate point. But this organization that we all sit on now, we had our first board meeting of April of 2016. And, you know, if you go April, May, and June, the board, the young group that we were actually very adamant about what we wanted to do in the world. In those first 3 meetings, we directed staff not to do 70% RPS and 30% brown, but we asked for 100% carbon free. A new organization out of no place departing from the state RPS to do something better for the environment, and not partway, but to go 100%. We set our rate structure to be 1% less than PG&E. And I know we could have done a huge amount of detailed rate analysis, but we set it to be 1% less than PG&E. And we hired our first CEO, Tom Hibachi, who literally started in an office in the corner of Sunnyvale City Hall and started bringing together staff and professional staff to make this thing start from the very beginning. But what's most amazing to me is not that the board had crazy ideas, we did, but staff instantly responded. Girish?
We were the first CCA to go 100% carbon free. We have reduced our emissions 24%, the overall community emissions, 24% since 2015. And the lower rates that you have approved has resulted in $69 million of on-bill savings to all your communities.
Yeah, and we did it, but staff did it. And so we really thank staff for being able to do that. You know, we got out of our very initial startup phase and Tom decided he wanted to go start a different CCA in Monterey, and he left us, and we were very fortunate to have hired Girish, and that was in December of 2017. There are a few of us here, myself and Rod Sinks, who are on both hiring panels, and it was very challenging, but we did exceptionally well. And of course, the requests didn't stop. We directed staff to help us solve the duck curve, and we asked for solar plus storage. And the headwind at the time, we were told that we might not get too many quotes and they might not be too competitive. But as I recall, we got 47 responses to that RFP, from which we were able to whittle this down. And we've made numerous other requests to staff for power. So Girish?
And that was just the beginning. When you approve the integrated resource plans, you set that view for the long-term purchasing policy for clean energy, and you have approved 7 power purchase agreements that drives us towards a zero carbon future. You've invested in hundreds of megawatts of solar, storage, geothermal, including the first new geothermal project to be built in California in the last 30 years. You invested $1 billion in 7 long-term PPAs, and we are currently negotiating contracts worth $400 million that will be brought to the board in Q1 of 2021.
And it didn't stop there. We were highly creative in the area of energy, but we were totally uncreative in the area of finance. That's an area where you want to dot every I and cross every T. And we were always proud of our finances. And even though we were a super young organization, we directed staff, probably the week after Grish got here, to go out and get us an investment grade credit rating.
And we did what you asked. We went to Moody's and we obtained an investment grade credit rating of Baa2. That's a big compliment to the work that has been put together. It basically says we have stable finances. And we are currently in the process of working with Standard & Poor's to get another rating, and we should have a result in a few weeks.
So in 3 years, we go from borrowed money from a handful of cities to $100 million in the bank and an investment grade credit rating from one of the top rating agencies. It didn't really stop there. We kind of had this mission, this thought that we were going to decarbonize the world. And we had a bunch of random ideas, thermostats and EV charging, and we asked staff to figure out how to make sense of our random thoughts of changing the world, and staff responded.
So you approved the electric vehicle infrastructure plan, which is our long-term plan for EVs. And we have 6 program areas, and we have committed $14 million to EV infrastructure that will result in about 100 DC fast chargers and 1,000 level 2 chargers installed in our service area in the coming years. More recently, you adopted the Building Decarbonization Plan with 6 cornerstone programs and $6 million committed to implement this, which will look at decarbonizing not just new buildings, but also looking at existing buildings. Lastly, 11 of our 13 agencies have adopted REACH codes, and this is the most of any county in California. So you were the first, and you did an amazing job there.
All right. And then the next one is sort of personal to me. Grish and I talked a lot about management style. And one thing he was very clear on was remote working doesn't come out very well. And so I had the sense that we would never be an organization that had very many remote workers. But then COVID hit. And we tasked Grish with 2 important tasks. 1, keep the business running. And 2, figure out how we could deal and help with the COVID and our citizens. Grish?
So you approved $10 million in COVID and community resilience relief. As of today, we have 26,853 low-income customers who have received bill credits of $100 each, totaling $2.82 million. We have 3,139 local small business customers who have been awarded $250 bill credits as of October, totaling $785,000. And we have allocated grants to all our member cities and agencies, totaling $5 million for community resiliency for local critical facilities.
And we have a highly productive and, for the most part, happy remote working staff, which again, our organization's hallmark is our ability to pivot on a dime to respond to the circumstances. And I personally want to thank you, Grish, because it wasn't a place that you wanted to be, but you did an exceptional job in making sure that our employees were all set up to be successful. And it is hard to even think that we were even 1 ounce less productive than we would have been had we been in the office. It's been absolutely amazing. And this was my lead into the item because I know we're going to recognize outgoing board members, but I want to remind everybody that whether this was me driving over to Milpitas, accompanied by a whole cadre of staff members, or whether it was us trying to figure out what was a good approach to decarbonization, or whether it was our response to COVID, it's the staff that has always come through for us. And I just want to say at the very beginning of this, that everything that's happened is because of the exceptional staff, the true heartfelt dedication and commitment that every employee has towards our mission. And as a board, as a chairman of this board, and speaking on behalf of our board to some degree, we could have done nothing without the members of staff who've just totally kicked butt over the last 5 years to make this become a reality. So that is my lead into this item. And Gresh and I prepared this whole program with at least 10 minutes of notice. So that was as smooth as we could get. And before us tonight is we are going to adopt some resolutions honoring several of our departing board members. But I believe our staff and our CEO have a bit of a presentation first. So take it away, Girish.
Thank you very much, Chair Miller. And Andrea is going to post the presentation up. You can go to the next slide. So today we're here to commend the service of 6 board members. You were just amazing. I'm still in denial, by the way. So I just can't believe that we are going to be losing so many amazing public servants. But that's the way the public process works. And it's the 6 of you who we are recognizing today. And on the next slide, here are your great smiling pictures that we put up on our website. And we have resolutions for you, which is from the Senate. And we can go to the next slide. And we are showing you photographs of the resolutions that will be mailed to you. So we have resolutions from the Senate here, and we'll go to the next slide to show the resolutions for Nancy, Jeannie, and Courtney. And we also have SVCE resolutions, which are in the board packet, and they've all been customized for each of you to recognize all the work that you've done. Obviously, you can't read this here on the picture, but it is in the board packet. It will be sent to your addresses in a frame. So this was put together by us, and yeah, it's just very heartfelt. So let's go to the next slide. We also are presenting you a gift, which is, this is an etching that hopefully is wall and display worthy, which shows the service area of SVCE and the carbon-free energy, wind, solar, and hydro, that you basically have provided 100% carbon-free electricity to 270,000 customers. You can show another photograph of this. Oh, is this the second photograph? Okay, so it will also be sent to you. And we will now like to move to a video that staff has put together for you.
Just over 2 years ago, the cities of Sunnyvale, Cupertino, Mountain View, and Santa Clara County all pulled together to conduct a study to determine the feasibility of providing a community choice energy. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
There's a tradition that you normally see where the county itself will convene cities within the county, will pull people together and say, let's go do something good. In this case, exactly the opposite happened, and we owe a debt of gratitude to all of you, all of the cities involved, for coming to the county and convening the county and saying this is something that you need to be involved in and something that's of mutual benefit to all of us.
We earn the customer's trust day in, day out by proving that we can handle their funds successfully, that we can invest back in our community in programs that are valuable, that contribute to our local economy, as well as to the programs that customers expect and demand of a company that's so innovative and forward-thinking.
We have brought together 16 different teams from around the county. They've all built, engineered, amazing electric bikes to compete with one another. These sorts of opportunities are amazing experiences for the kids. It lets them experiment, it lets them do engineering work, lets them experience critical thinking, and it requires teamwork.
We set out to realize an audacious goal. Could we be completely carbon-free in our base rate with rates lower than PG&E? We have been very successful at that strategy. From day one, we've met our goal of carbon-free electricity for a bit less than PG&E, and we're now moving on to innovative programs to reduce our carbon footprint further in our built environment and in transportation.
I mean, just focusing on the built environment one, I think it's great that we're looking at the REACH codes and at changing the culture. I think that's very important to lay the groundwork for things that will change, bend the curve over time, and also start people thinking about it.
Hello, Director Miller. We wanted to take a moment to say thank you for all of your years of service to Silicon Valley Clean Energy. We appreciate everything you've done for the organization and for us as employees. You've been a tireless advocate for our needs and our benefits, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we wish you the best.
Thank you to Director Miller for being such a key player in SVCE's ability to change the world through how we run our organization, decisions on power supply, and key insights into program design.
Thank you for being an advocate for your community and beyond. Your presentation and engagement with Milpitas was instrumental in inviting this community to be a part of SVCE.
Thank you, Director Miller, for your proved agility in steering SVCE to transition to a new working environment and for supporting the community through COVID relief programs.
Thank you, Vice Chair Smith, for your contributions and service over these past 3 years to SVCE. Thank you for also being a champion for youth leaders and voices in climate action.
Thank you, Director Smith, for keeping Sunnyvale at the forefront of climate change solutions and being a strong advocate for the CCA community.
Vice Chair Smith, thank you for your strong support of SVCE and the CCA community at large.
Hello, Vice Chair Smith. This is Melissa saying thank you so much for your service on the SVCE board. I appreciate how you jumped in on the various committees, the Executive Committee, the Audit Committee, and my personal favorite, the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee. Anyway, thank you again. Don't be a stranger. I hope we have a chance to collaborate in the future.
Thank you, Director Sinks, for your committed leadership, going all the way back to the early days in 2014, and of course, as SVC's first board chair in 2016. You were absolutely instrumental in making SVC happen, and your contributions have been an inspiration to the entire SVC community.
Thank you, Director Sinks, for being a leader on the Ad Hoc Regulatory and Legislative Committee and in SVCE's legislative advocacy, and for working through important decisions on the Risk Oversight Committee.
Director Sinks, thank you for pushing for innovative power projects like solar plus storage that help to mark SVCE as a leader within the industry.
Thank you, Director Sinks, for everything that you've done for SVCE and the member agency communities. You brought a very collaborative perspective to the board. You reminded us to always seek partnerships, to be able to learn from others, especially at the Air District. You also never shied away from asking tough questions about our programs portfolio and our approach to test whether we might be able to do things better. We will miss your leadership. Thank you again for your service to SVCE and the community.
Jeannie, thank you for your years of service to Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Your experience serving on so many regional boards really helped us out in making us be a much more professional organization. Secondly, your support of employees was phenomenal. You showed up at every event and you were our #1 cheerleader. Thank you so much and all the very best.
Director Bruins, thank you so much for supporting the community and attending events like SVCE's Bike to the Future. It really means a lot to have local leaders showing up and supporting the youth and the community members.
Thank you, Director Corrigan, for always being such a joy to work with and for running the SVCE board meetings efficiently and effectively when you served as our board chair.
Thank you, Director Corrigan, for representing SVCE at Los Altos Hills events by speaking to community members about their clean energy.
Hello, Director Corrigan. We just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for all of your years of service to Silicon Valley Clean Energy. You've been a tireless advocate for the organization, and we appreciate the gusto with which you jumped into so many responsibilities, including the audit committee and, most importantly, I think, the ROC, which would go over so many people's heads, and you dove right in, and it's made a lot of difference. So we appreciate all of it, and we will miss you. Thank you, and we wish you the best.
Director Corrigan, thank you for your service as board chair and for your thoughtful questions about rates.
Thank you, Director Cortese, for helping SVC obtain critical votes in the California Assembly and Senate.
Thank you for your great attention to detail and the robust experience you bring from serving on other boards.
Thank you to all our outgoing directors for your time and energy and passion for serving on our board. Director Cortese, it was an absolute pleasure getting to work with you on our launch ceremony in April 2017, and also working on an op-ed that called for regulatory reforms that will allow us to continue to do our important work. Thank you so much for all of your time and service on our board.
Dear departing board members, we're so sad to see you leave the board. Each of you, in your own way, brought so much benefit to SVCE. Not just the very mission of bending the carbon curve by lowering emissions, but also added so much, whether it was ideas and technology, supporting our employees, improving our processes, all these different things that you brought to the table to make this new organization grow and be a success. Thank you so much. Rest assured that your contributions are going to live on long after you leave this board. You are really leaving a legacy that's going to make not just Silicon Valley Clean Energy, but the Bay Area and the world a better place. Thank you so much and all the very best.
Totally amazing.
Howard, over to you.
And you got the video to come out just right with the music too.
It's Pam and her group are amazing. So all very heartfelt from our staff.
So we're going to go to the public and see if there's any comments from the members of the public. But I forgot one very important accomplishment, and I really need to thank staff for the insulated grocery bag. That is one of the biggest accomplishments at the sidewalk handout station at our community events. Those bags are the most amazing thing. And with that, if we can bring up the slide, we are going to go to the members of the public. Any member of the public may address the body on this item. If you wish to do so, please indicate that by raising your virtual hand in Zoom, or if you're on the phone, you can do that by pressing *9. And I think we're going to start with Bruce. There you go.
There I go. Doubly unmuted. I think that was a wonderful and well-deserved tribute, and thank you very much to the staff members who put it together and participated. You know, the comments that were made earlier about the beginnings of Silicon Valley Clean Energy made me very nostalgic for those days when we were just barely trying to find how such a radical idea could possibly work. But we're fortunate to be in the valley where radical ideas come into existence on a regular basis. And I'm glad to see the success the agency has had. I wanted to mention just one thing. I've been doing a lot of work with other community choice advocates for years and years. And recently, realizing that Dave Cortese was moving on to the state Senate after serving on SVCE's board, I put out a question to the community and asked if any other community choice board member was serving in Sacramento in the legislature. And not having received any responses to that question, I'm going to jump to the conclusion that Dave is in fact the only former CCA board member now serving in the legislature. And so that sort of makes him the point person, I guess, for some of the future lobbying efforts that the 20 plus CCAs will be trying to work on. But perhaps even more exciting than that is that there are now 80% of the senators and 76% of the assembly members represent parts of the state that have an active CCA. So, we are a majority of the legislators. And so that certainly opens up possibilities for influence in Sacramento that haven't previously existed. And I hope that everyone involved will take full advantage of that to try to maintain a level, or not to maintain, to achieve a level playing field for community choice energy organizations as they go head to head with PG&E, SDG&E, and Southern California Edison. So congratulations to all those who have served, and I hope that you'll be serving in different capacities in the future, either in volunteer organizations like Carbon-Free Silicon Valley, or in any other way that fits your skills and interests. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bruce. And thank you, Bruce, for your support over the years. You showed up at the first meeting as Carbon-Free Mountain View, and we started chiding you guys that maybe you should be Carbon-Free Silicon Valley, and you took that on. But more importantly, at our second or third board meeting, you brought us all buttons that said, I heart Silicon Valley clean energy, and we all wore those to many board meetings. So thank you, Bruce, for all that you have done and your organization has done, and your tireless advocacy for this super, super important mission that we're on. Okay, is there any other member of the public that wishes to address this body? Seeing none, I will come back to us, and I am sure that each of our outgoing directors probably wants to say something, and some of our board members might want to make a few comments. So if I could just get you all to raise your hand, and I'll take you in the order that your hands show up in Zoom, and we'll work it from there. So we're going to start with Rob and then Liz.
Thank you, Chair Miller. I didn't actually prepare any remarks. I spent all my effort saying goodbye to our council members last night, but I would like to say I'm going to miss all of you. 5 of the 6 of you were founding members, and I remember back in the beginning, us running around trying to get this thing started. It feels like kind of a family that's departing now, with so many founding members leaving all at once. Jeannie, I wanted to thank you for nominating me for when I was chair, and all the wisdom you brought to the board. And I remember, I was the second chair after Rod, and there was so much energy and everybody wanted to talk. And, it was like trying to herd a bunch of passionate kids. And, we've matured a little bit since then, but all of the passion I remember back then from when we were founding this. And Nancy was a great replacement for our founding member from Sunnyvale, and you've always been a great environmental champion, and so this was a great place for you. And I think you brought special talents to our legislative committee too. So I think we're really going to miss you there. And Courtney, you've done a great job. I remember when we recruited you to be on the rock, and you're like, oh no, wait, I don't know, I don't know. And of course you did a great job. You learned quickly and you did a great job. And then I recruited you to be the chair after me, and you're like, oh, I don't know. But then of course you were a great chair. So I'm gonna miss you also for all of your contributions. Rod is the last member from the 3 cities that actually first came together before everybody else joined. So he's really the last founder of the founders. And I really want to thank Rod for all of his passion all the way along, always pushing us to keep pushing the envelope, always pushing us to, keep an eye out for our competition, PG&E, make sure we don't get squashed, keep an eye on what's going on. He was always keep an eye on what's going on at the PUC, make sure that, we aren't brought under by some new, and then, talk to our legislators and make sure that, bills don't kill us. So I think we're really gonna miss Rod, and I'm gonna have to maybe step it up and take over his position as keeping us honest. And discussions in the Rock with Howard, you were always bringing wisdom. You're always the most informed. I enjoyed our technical discussions at the Rock, also with Rod also. I think that might be the list. So anyway, thank you for all the good times, and I'm gonna miss everybody.
Thank you, Rob. And don't worry, we're only counting on you to help keep the place together. Liz?
Well, I'm so pleased that staff put together those tributes, because they all brought back incredible memories over the last basically 5 years. I will simply say that personally, I've known and been on all of you. I'm going to miss each and every one of you. All had marvelous conversations and challenged ourselves, and the board has challenged ourselves, working with such a great staff and seeing the ability of a diverse group of people. 13 people on a board working so well, because they were the quality of the individual, the richness person, Jeannie, Howard, Rod, Dave, and Courtney, and Nancy. It's going to be so different without you. Know that your presence will always be in the background because of what you brought to us as a board and to an organization. And thank you for committing to what it takes to have brought us so incredibly far and pushed your fellow board members and staff to be the organization we are and will be. So, and keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. And you're one of the people we're counting to keep this place together too. Next up is Javed, and then George.
Thank you, Howard. I guess I'm not a rookie anymore. It's my 2nd year, but I've always looked at all of you guys in amazement. Howard, especially you, and Rod and others. You guys have just brought such a wealth of knowledge that you and I can somewhat figure out what's going on. As Aristotle once said that if the art of shipbuilding was in the wood, the trees would all be ships. So what you guys have done is basically build a ship, build the whole Silicon Valley clean energy system. And it's surprising that only 3 or 4 years have now gone by. The way you guys have managed this, it's like you've been doing, you've been at the helm forever, or been running this thing forever. But the last 3 years you've done it. And these are big shoes, and it's too bad that so many very talented, qualified, experienced people are leaving us. Between Jeannie and Rod and Howard and Nancy. That's just a wealth of knowledge, information that's leaving us. So we hope in some capacity you can come back and haunt us or do some other things and keep us straight. And finally, I'm really, you keep saying we're going to change the world, and Margaret Mead said, if it shouldn't be said that a small group of people can't change the world. it's always been a small group of people that has changed the world. And in the ways you guys have started it, hopefully we can continue with it, and those who follow us will continue in your footsteps. So thank you very, very much. It's just been a great pleasure for me to have been on this board.
Thank you, Javed. And I gotta say, it's not hopefully, we know you guys will be able to keep going. And 2 years, you're now one of the seasoned, experienced veterans. George, slightly less seasoned and slightly less veteran, but you attended more meetings than any alternate that I know of.
I've never heard that before. Well, anyway, I confess to a sense of dismay looking at the names of the people and the qualities of the people that are leaving us. And it does leave giant shoes for us. And rather than try to cover everything, I just want a special shout out to my partner, Courtney, who, as soon as I was elected, she grabbed me and said, this is what you need to do. And we're going to have a 2-year plan, and you're going to be an alternate, and you're required to attend all the meetings as alternates. No, she didn't say that. And so I don't know that I'm ready, but she helped me get as ready as I can be. And we just try to step into those shoes that you all are leaving us.
You are 100% ready, George, and thank you. Next up is Margaret, and then Nisa.
Well, seeing everyone here, I'm really actually kind of sad and getting a little emotional. It's been a real honor to work with all of you, and just watching the video brought back a lot of memories. And for me, I remember the 2014 as I was leaving my council, I think it was Rod and of course Bruce Carney who brought this up and said, you need to do this, and that's what got the feasibility study going. And then I turned out and came back 2 years later, and you guys are almost up and running and ready to launch. And just when people say government is slow, I think you really proved everybody wrong with that. But thank you to all of you. Thank you, Courtney, for being my chair. And getting to be your vice chair was awesome. Howard, thank you for letting me be chair. I appreciate your letting me go first or go ahead of you. And Jeannie and Nancy, thank you for all of your work. And with Sunnyvale and Mountain View, we try to do a lot together, and so it's been a great partnership with Nancy and your crew. So I wish you all the best. I think when we do this work of public service, I like to think, we do this to leave a legacy, and you certainly have done that by helping to start this amazing organization. So congratulations and thank you, and we wish you all the best. And yeah, please, keep in touch. I'm sure we'll see you around. So this is just goodbye for now for the board. Thanks.
We may threaten to show up at an occasional meeting. And Margaret, it was my honor to withdraw my name because the organization needed your skill set far more than they needed mine at that point. You did an amazing job, and thank you for all that you did. And I hope that you're going to stay very close to help keep these guys in check. And Nisa, just for you, I found my jacket and the tie, so I hope I've satisfied your expectations.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Howard. And Howard, Jeannie, Courtney, Nancy, Dave, and Rod, thank you so much for all the work you've done to bring us here today. As Margaret said, this is a true legacy that you all can hold up. When I do think about all the work you've done only in 4 or 5 years, I am really in awe. It's very impressive. And so thank you. And I'm speaking on behalf of all the residents in the different cities, because this again is true public service. You are doing this because you believed in the cause and you believed it was good for the residents. I will pick up on something George said, because Jeannie did the same thing to me. After I was elected, she reached out to me immediately, and everybody knows Jeannie, she had the plan in place. And what she expressed was the fact that this was a very special board. And she wanted to make sure that someone who shared the passion and would take it seriously would take over when she stepped down. And so she recommended that I put in my name to be the alternate, which I did. And so thank you, Jeannie, for encouraging me. Thanks for all the work that you've done for our community. And I want to say, this is not just a loss for SBCE. Losing these leaders, it's a loss for our region. because as we know, they all served on different regional boards and were huge contributors. And so we'll sorely miss them. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Nisa. And I don't view it as a loss because there are people like you here, which represent, you know, the new talent and the new enthusiasm and the new energy. And so we're going to be there rooting for you. And if anybody feels like they need advice, they can call us. But I think you guys have this well in hand. Next, we're going to do Courtney, and then we're going to do Jeannie.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So those of you who know me know I have 3 sons, and they love to take bets on whether I'm going to cry at certain commercials or movies. But the safest bet of all is that I cry at goodbyes. So I'm not going to belabor this one. I'm just going to tell you that it has been my absolute honor and pleasure to work with each and every one of you. Staff, each one of you are amazing. I'm sat in those meetings marveling at the work you do. Probably, I think I've said this before, but I remember when we lost Tom, we thought, oh, the sky is falling. And then miraculously appears Garish. And everybody within weeks is like, Tom who? Don't tell him. I have loved it. And I owe each of you such a debt of gratitude for making my job look easy when I served on this board as the chair. Thank you to each one of you, and I will not go far.
Thank you, Courtney, and thank you for being the voice of sanity in many meetings when us nerds were going deep. You were very clear that this was too complicated for mere mortals to understand, and the professional staff is the one who's going to have to figure things out. Thank you, Courtney, for always being there. Jeannie?
So I also want to say thank you. You know, this was an honor to serve on this board. And I think for me, it's so interesting when you mentioned, you know, like government, you know, operates at the speed of snail mail, right? Except here we are in the heart of Silicon Valley, and here it is, a public agency that has done a remarkable startup that I think, you know, holds a candle to any other startup that has happened in Silicon Valley when you look at how much has been achieved in its short lifetime. Like Courtney, you know, I think the original group that brought us Tom did a fantastic job. He was the right person at the right time. And yes, it was a hard pill to swallow when he decided that he was going to move on. But Jarish, you clearly came in at the right time for your skill set. And it has been remarkable. And it's been a pleasure getting to know you. You know, Rod and Howard, yes, you are 2 local nerds on this one, but you know what? It could not happen without you two. And, you know, Rod, as was said, we're instrumental in the founding of this. And Howard, you came to this with every bit as much passion and knowledge and know-how. It's been incredible. Courtney, it's been a real pleasure serving with you. You were when you came onto this board, I was amazed. Your commitment, and you were such a quick study. And then to step up to the plate and be the chair of this wonderful board, you did so with such grace, and it was just wonderful serving with you. And Nancy, you did the same kind of thing. You came in and you really kind of wanted to pick up on that whole legislative piece, and I really appreciate all that hard work that you put in. But you know, I think, as everyone says and everybody knows, electeds, we're nothing without staff. Staff is the ones that make, you know, us look good, and sometimes we are the ones who get to take the credit. But I'll tell you, this agency has an amazing, amazing, amazing talent pool. And staff, you are masters at what you do. Your execution is phenomenal. Your passion and your commitment has just been remarkable. And again, very proud to be part of Silicon Valley and having been part of this organization. So thank you all. And yes, don't be strangers.
Thank you, Jeannie, and thank you for your foresight in planning your transition. And I know that you probably wouldn't want to say it this way, but you got to admit, for a board with 12 people on it, we are the most functional organization in Silicon Valley. Am I right? There we go. She didn't have to say the words. All right. Next up is Nancy, and then we'll go to Rod.
Yeah, well, thank you. It has been such a privilege to serve on this board, and I've been so impressed with each and every one of you on the board, including staff. And I've started as an alternate. I attended as many meetings as I could, but that still didn't prepare me for the moment when we had the training of new board members, and got a brain dump for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours. It was so intimidating, but I'll tell you, even though the Sunnyvale rep is turning over, we still have one of the first ever staff members in our staff. So Melody Tovar is one of the very early staff members who came over, and she still reviews the packets and gives guidance to whoever my successor will be. And I will just say that we had our study session where people expressed interest, and there was a robust set of council members who are interested in carrying forward the work of the agency. And I have every confidence in them and their ability to carry forward the work. And I am really happy that the executive committee had the foresight to push staff to do, say, more thoughtful board training. So I think we're leaving with a great set of materials to onboard new board members and to bring them up to speed on what they need to know. Personally, I am very happy that I was able to sponsor and mentor the founder of the Youth Climate Ambassadors. I think I got that right. And so one of the things I've really enjoyed is stoking the friendly competition. And I'm just really happy that a Sunnyvale resident who was brought on by SVCE is one of the inaugural Hall of Famers at the Energy Commission. So I think that's really great that both Sunnyvale and SVCE were able to help him achieve some recognition. I've really adored working with the Ledge Action, and will carry some of those memories about our successes and not so successes with me for a long time. I think SVCE is a fabulous partner with the community, specifically in Sunnyvale. They sponsored the ice rink. So SVCE, probably the staff there, Colleen, probably spent more time at the ice rink than I did, and I spent a lot of time. So I appreciate the partnership there. And finally, on the plus side, I'm really glad that Sunnyvale squeaked in the reach codes before I got off the board. So that's a big happy moment for me. And then lastly, I'm so glad that SVCE will be headquartered in Sunnyvale for at least the next few years. So that's also fabulous. And so thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing what great things you do in the coming years.
Thank you, Nancy. And I got a small concern. You probably know the answer. You were the biggest connection we had to the youth, to the next generation, or even 2 generations after some of us old guys, right? I am hopeful that there's somebody who knows how to engage these people in the very active way that you did. And then my second comment, I want to thank you and Sunnyvale, who's a very competitive city, for hanging back on the reach codes for so long to allow all of us to have our opportunity to get them in first for like the only time in an environmental issue in the history of the Valley. So thank you to Sunnyvale for being so cordial in allowing us to go first for the only time.
Nice spin there, Howard. I appreciate that.
Gotta have something. Okay, next we're gonna go with Rod. Before Rod speaks, I gotta just point out, you guys all probably know this intuitively. Rod is the only person in my life that Rod and I, within the last 3 months, have had an hour-long fearsome debate, and we both mathematically proved after an hour of this debate that we agreed to within a fraction of 1%. But we were looking at the exact same problem from 2 different sides. But I do appreciate Rob's ability to go deep on anything and to have his facts straight. So Rod?
You people are killing me. This is so much fun. I'd like to reflect a little bit on the community advocates who made this happen. I mean, carbon-free Mountain View, you know, it seems like the best the best things in government often happen because there are a bunch of people in the community that say this should be, and we need the government. And then you find a few people who are willing to take it on and form this. And in this case, you know, there are a few people we haven't mentioned tonight that I feel like I must. Jim Griffith from Sunnyvale, John McAllister from Mountain View. So these two were mayors with me in 2015, I guess it was. And we worked with our staffs. We had come from, Jim and I, particularly from startup culture, and we said, we need to put you all in a room and lock the door, and we want results in 6 months. And yeah, okay, maybe it took a year or whatever, but we were grateful to our city managers for taking a risk on this. I mean, I think my city put in over $500,000 in what I'd call risk capital on something that might have just fallen in the dust. But we were inspired by Marin Clean Energy and the story that Sean Marshall told when she came down to the Cities Association in the spring of 2014. So to all the staff members from those cities that took the risk, and my partners at that time, Jim and John, I'm grateful. To the community advocates, you know, you created the critical mass, and we went together to places like, God forbid, Gilroy, and said, you ought to join us. And it took them a little bit, but they did. And yeah, Milpitas, and they did. And, you know, frankly, even the county, there was one Dave Cortese who wasn't quite so sure he wanted to go in with this thing that the cities were leading at the time that the supervisors took a vote to join. And, you know, he acknowledged that by the time we had our ceremony. So I really appreciated that. We had people right at the county and elsewhere saying, oh, go slow. We don't, you know, we're the public sector. We can't afford to take risks, but we did take some modest risks. And I think results proved out. This is my third and no doubt best startup. Okay. I was part of two in the private sector. And for me, this just tops everything because of the huge value created for everybody, right? This is such a win. So to my fellow departing directors, Jeannie, the only thing I wondered about is when you said VTA had a good governance model, and I just scratched my head. Thought, well, okay, but you brought a lot of skill from, you know, large companies and what processes we would need to think about. Courtney, your financial acumen and your ability to grok things quickly has been said, extraordinary. Nancy, we really appreciated all of your thoughtful input on programs and other things when you joined the board. You know, Howard, gosh, what can I say about you? I'm still pissed off, Howard, that you have more patents than me by a mile. I'm never going to get there at the rate I'm going and the rate you're going. I can't see it. But, you know, you brought so many skills to this party. Your financial acumen, your understanding of energy markets. I'm talking esoteric understanding of energy markets. Your, you know, the culture, and I think you set a tone for the organization, as did early board members, to say, you know, the capital that we care about at this organization is the human capital. We want employees to feel empowered to be bold and do the right thing. And Howard, I give you a lot of credit, along with the people that I've mentioned and those of you still on the board that have been around a while, for putting people first in the organization and saying, you know, yes, we have a mission to serve our customers, but we're going to hire the best and the brightest, and we're going to create a great team. Tom did a great job, frankly. We were lucky to be able to find and have an opportunity to hire Girish. I don't know anybody better of the umpteen now CCAs in the area. And yeah, I'm just grateful for the culture that he and his team have now created. It's very exciting to see this take off. And yeah, I guess that's about it, except for, you know, be well and don't forget to have fun. Okay? That's
I was expecting a little song and dance there, Rod.
well, we did that last week, so thank you. It's been such an honor to serve with all of you, and I'm confident that this board will do great things in the future. I see leaders on it, and I have no qualms about stepping down at this time because, frankly, it's going really well right now. So don't screw it up.
Those total words of confidence. The joke on the whole patent thing is none of my patents are worth anything, and so Rod's got me beat that way. You know, we used to say you could burn them for heat, but now that we've gone carbon free, we can't even do that with them. So, Susan, did you want to say anything, or?
Well, mostly because I didn't want to be the only one to not thank all of you, and listening to all of these testimonies really, in part, makes me wonder what the heck I'm doing here, and part is incredibly inspiring to follow in your footsteps, to be part of an organization that was started so capably and so brilliantly, and to be charged with carrying on your legacy, not screwing it up, supporting the staff to do even bigger and better and bolder things. And it really truly has been an honor to work with all of the directors who are leaving. You've been inspirational, and I hope to make you proud.
You will, Susan, and you have so
You
far.
will.
Total confidence. I thanked each of you as we went. My reflections on the organization are as follows. This wasn't a sort of a risky proposition. This was a crazy risky proposition. And those first 3 cities in the county that put money in with very little possibility that we could even form the CCA. It was absolutely amazing. And for our cities that each put in a little bit of money, and we kind of worried when we would get it back, I will remind everybody we got it back a year ahead of time. And when we got it back, there was millions of dollars already in the bank. And now we have well over $100 million in the bank. So this is a highly successful startup. The other thing they talk about startups, you know, we were learning to fly the plane at the same time we were taking the plane off, at the same time we were building the plane. And I want to thank the early staff members. It had to be quite a challenge to have more board members, each of us with passionate opinions, than there were staff members. And we stayed in that state for several years, I will remind you. And so the early staff also took professional risk that was beyond the potential for rewards. We did manage to get into the air. We did ask staff to accelerate rather than 18 months. We brought everybody online in 6 months, and we did that while we were flying the plane too. And again, we did hire Garish, and there are 2 major things that happened with Garish, and it's not as well known to everybody, but we did create a strategic plan. And then we actually turned the strategic plan from a complete everything plan to a real strategic plan. And we came up with a structured timeline and system by which the board knows where the critical inputs are for key decisions. We now have a process to run the organization and fly the plane. And this didn't exist before we hired Garish, and it's hidden inside our processes, but we now actually have a very structured system by which we set the goals, do the review, approve the budget, set the rates, in a super structured and methodical way. So you guys can't screw it up, so don't. For the board members who are here, some of you, your first meeting, I have complete confidence in you. You have been following along. You have been engaged. You guys know what you're doing. You will make us all proud. I have absolute confidence. And there are some board members that don't know they're board members yet. Their councils will be picking them in January or in December, and they will be watching this very meeting. And my comments to them and my advice to them is talk to our CEO and to our staff, because they know everything about everything. And if you're really stuck and really desperate, Rod Sinks and I are always available. if you want to get nerdy. But the rest of them, the rest of our past board members who have a much more balanced perspective on life are also available to you should you need anything. With that, I want to end by thanking again whoever found that insulated grocery bag. You're the best. You are the best. And if it's not the insulated grocery bag, it's solar plus storage. It's a wind project. It's a geothermal project. It is a bike to the future. It's a hackathon. It is every employee gets a little money so they can work at home and a little more, and we change the benefits to match. It is every single person in this organization who every single day gives of themselves so that we can achieve this mission that is a little bit crazy. We're just used to it sounding normal, but we want to change the world and we want to bend the carbon curve faster than it otherwise would have happened. So thank you to the staff for all you do day in and day out. And with that, as our final word, we should applaud staff. And to close out on this item, I do think I need a motion to adopt all these resolutions.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, now I totally blinked. Who was it that moved it?
Rob.
Rob. And who was it that seconded it? Margaret. So I think we're going to go that way. And with that, we will go to our clerk for a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Chair Miller.
Aye.
Aye.
Vice Chair Smith.
Yes.
Gibbons.
Yes.
Willie.
Yes.
Liger.
Yes.
Tyson.
Yes.
Rennie.
Aye.
Elahi.
Yes.
Yulo.
Aye.
Abeykoga.
Aye.
Ellenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries with Directors Tovar and Montano absent.
All right, thank you guys for that. All right, moving along with our agenda. Next up is public comment on matters not on the agenda. Oh yeah, there's some people who don't have to stay too. Thank you for joining us, these special guests. And you're welcome to stay till the end, or you can find your way to something more enjoyable.
I'll just say, I'd like to introduce John Willie, who is my alternate in Cupertino. Since we've done our rotation, he is serving as board member from Cupertino this evening. He was gracious enough to ask me to meet with him in Girish. So I'm sure he will ably represent my city, and I will sign off and let you go about your business. Thank you.
Well, I'll make the comment that, boy, I sure have some big shoes to fill. So thank you so much, Rod.
Thank you, John. Good luck, everyone. Bye-bye.
John, 2 years ago, we did the training meeting, and one of the members after lunch, after getting all the technical information, was 100% convinced that she was being pranked because there was no way that this could be this complicated. So hold on to your seat, and everybody's here to help you. All right, back to non-agendized item. If there is any member of the public that wishes to comment on something that is not on the agenda, please indicate your desire to do so by raising your virtual hand. Or if you're on the phone, you can do that by pressing *9. Seeing nothing from our public, I come back to us and we will move forward with our consent calendar. Consent calendar contains important items of routine business that we can act on in one motion. Is there anyone who wishes to pull or comment on an item on the consent calendar or make a motion?
And move to adopt.
Second.
All right, Javed, and then Liz, I believe. Let me check with the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on anything on the consent calendar? If you wish to do so, please raise your virtual hand, or you can do that by pressing *9 if you're on the phone. Seeing none, I will come back to us. Anybody have any final comments on this? We'll go to the clerk for a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Chair Miller.
Aye.
Vice Chair Smith.
Yes.
Gibbons.
Yes.
Willie.
Yes.
Liger.
Yes.
Tyson.
Yes.
Rennie.
Aye.
Elahi.
Aye.
Yulo.
Aye.
Abeykoga.
Aye.
Ellenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries with Directors Tovar and Montano absent.
Perfect. Thank you guys for that. And man, I'm sitting here thinking I got to get through this whole agenda without getting Corrigan syndrome and start bursting into tears. So with that, let me introduce for the last time for me, our CEO's report.
Thank you, Chair Miller. I only have one item I want to talk to you about today. I want to introduce newest member of the SVCE team. We're very honored to have an intern who comes to us from the Intel Encore program. Intel has an Encore program for their employees who are retired, who want to give back by working for a public or nonprofit agency. And we are lucky to have Mr. Sanjay Natu, who is going to be helping Andrea and myself and the leadership team put into action every day the work plan that accompanies the strategic plan. And with that, I'm going to invite Sanjay to introduce himself. Sanjay?
Okay. Hi, everybody. Very nice to meet you. I followed your proceedings. It was quite impressive, the history of SVCE and what SVCE is doing. I worked at Intel straight out of college and worked there for 40 years, and starting as a design engineer and retiring as a senior program manager. So in the last 10, 15 years of my career, I was managing major programs of Intel of introducing their big core generation projects. And then Intel has this program. They work with an organization called Encore, which pairs up retirees with nonprofits or public agencies that they are interested in. And there was that pairing where Kevin Armstrong helped arrange, and then Girish gave me an opportunity to join. And this is my second or third week here. I like all aspects of clean energy and want to understand more. And my interest is how different pieces connect together to make the clean energy possible. I'm a technologist and an engineer, so I know the science of it, but I think taking it from there to actually implementing it in the society has many challenges. And from whatever I've learned so far, I'm really impressed by what a big task it is and what a good job SVC is doing. Thanks.
Sanjay,
Thank you. Sorry.
I got to just say thank you. And you know, you come from a place that did change the world. And so thank you for joining us, because that's exactly what we're trying to do. So I think the staff is going to love having your talent. And it's absolutely, I didn't know this program existed. It's absolutely amazing that we could have somebody like you helping us behind the scenes. So thank you for spending some of your retirement with us.
All right, thank you.
That's all I have my CEO report, other than what's in writing in the report. Open to any questions you have on the report itself. Otherwise, I'll hand it back to you, Chair Miller.
Okay, anybody with any questions? Let me double check with the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on this item? I'll grab you on the backside, Rod. Any member of the public that wishes to comment on this? If you wish to do so, please indicate that by raising your virtual hand, or if you're on the phone, you can do that by pressing *9. Seeing none, I'll come back to us. Rob.
I just wanted to tell Sanjay that I worked at National Semiconductor Arrival for 20 years, and I finished as a program manager also.
Nice to meet you.
Kindred spirits and like minds, welcome. All right, so next up, item 3, adopt a resolution implementing our generation rates. And I think we're gonna have Don Bray. There you are.
All right, good evening, directors.
Our topic here tonight is the one that we come around to just about every December. For those of you that have been around, it's rates season. We are looking at a PG&E rate increase, a significant one as of January. But going back to our FY 2021 operating budget, we were actually expecting a very significant rate change in September of this year, of 2020. That's when we were expecting the big PCIA increase to happen. And as a result of that, we were basically assuming in the budget that we would decrease our discount relative to PG&E from 4% to 1% to absorb some of the impact of that significant increase in the PCIA, to keep us competitive in the market and to keep us in the black operationally. So again, that was assumed in the budget. Things were delayed, and it now is January that we're looking to make that change. So our recommendation here tonight will be to move formally from 4% to 1% as of January. Next slide. So again, highlights from the September 20 budget presentation. Again, our assumption that we would move to 1%. Next slide. Going into the detail a little bit, we were thinking that in October, the PCIA would move from 3.2 to 4.8 cents, so a very significant 50% increase. We were assuming that generation rates would remain flat, and again, to absorb this and stay in the black, we were anticipating moving our discount from 4 to 1% in October. As I mentioned, things got delayed, and we're now looking at an increase from 3.2 cents to 4.56 cents as of January, so a very significant increase, just slightly delayed. We're also looking at some twists and turns in the generation rate, a 2.5% decrease in gen rates in January, followed by a 3.5% increase in March, nets out about even, but some dynamics that we're going to have to manage in our rates. So again, it's important that we make this change by as close as we can to the 1st of January so that our customers aren't impacted by the increase in the PCIA relative to our rate. And in that case, they would be paying more for our service than PG&E. So we want to make that change right away. We want to get your pre-approval in a sense of this move to 1%. When we net this all out for the year, we are going to see more of an impact to our contribution to reserves than we were anticipating because the overall net increase in PCIA is a little higher. It, in very round numbers, will likely impact our contribution to reserves for the year to the tune of about 5 million. So from a projected 8.2 million contribution to reserves to 3.2. And we'll be looking at this in more detail in the mid-year budget in a couple of months. Next slide, please. I think many of you have seen this chart before, just showing how our rates lay out. The two columns to the left are 2020 rates. You can see the PG&E generation rate on the right, and then on the left, the way our rates are constructed, our generation rate, and then the PG&E PCIA on top of that. Of course, our customers pay both of those amounts. And then we strive to maintain a difference between what our customers pay and PG&E. So you can see in the 2020 example on the left, a 4% savings. Moving to the right, this is where we're headed in 2021. That PCIA box is increasing quite a bit. We'll be reducing our gen rate, and we'll also be reducing the relative discount to PG&E, again, to stay competitive relative to PG&E and to maintain as much contribution margin as possible. Next slide. We have a 2-week turnaround from when we get PG&E's actual rates. We normally get those the last week or so of December. then to work with our data services provider, Calpine, and actually get the rates baked into our billing system requires about 2 weeks. So again, we want to get this discount pre-approved now so that we can perform that function just as quickly as possible and get the rates in early January. And we will be looking at another rate change likely in March. As I mentioned in an earlier slide, that'll probably be a rate increase to follow a PG&E increase. So there's going to be a lot of rate activity here over the next couple of months. Next slide. So in summary, again, we are recommending that the board approve a resolution that directs the CEO to reduce our discount effective January 2021 from 4% to 1%. Any questions?
Don, just the most basic. There are over 100, almost 200 different rates. And what we're doing is we're making sure that no matter which rate schedule you're on, you pay slightly less than PG&E by being a SVCE customer, right?
Yes, exactly. So every rate class, whether it's commercial or residential, and every time of use period, all those rates are set 1% less than PG&E.
And then just a quick question on the PCIA. You know, this has gone up massively since we formed as an agency. Do we have any indication that there may be improved transparency with respect to PCIA? And do we have any forward visibility that lets us hope or think that this might stabilize at some point?
I may let Girish comment on this, but in short, I think CalCCA certainly is making efforts to better understand what that forward projection is. There's a formal effort underway to model that. So we're getting a better view of it. The PCIA should go down after another year or two due to a variety of reasons, and so we're just getting a better sense for how this will project into the future. But I think we really will be seeing the peak of this, over the next probably 12 to 24 months. I don't know, Girish, if you'd have anything to add.
Yeah, if I may add to that, the CPUC just had a proposed decision on the PCIA on Friday, and one of the elements of that decision was to provide more information to CCAs and basically DA customers, et cetera, on a monthly basis on some of the sales that they've made, the quantities of the sales, the price, et cetera. So we'll have more information to help us track and project what the PCIA is. I think there's still more improvements that could be folded in, and we are going to be interested in moving that forward, both on the legislative side and, of course, working with the CPUC.
Excellent. All right, so we got a couple other questions, Tony and then Javed.
I'm going to ask you a math question. Sorry, I had thought of it in advance. I would have given you a warning, but in the near term, with PCIA going up and PG&E gen rates going down, do we know in January, will the average residential customer, will their rate go up or down, actually?
So that question is complicated because it's not just generation rates,
so
right?
So stop. If you don't know, it's a kind of an unfair question to ask you on the fly. So
the net is electricity rates are going to be trending up, and that's looking at transmission and distribution and generation rates. Again, by the time you factor in wildfire costs and just general inflation, the market is moving up at the moment. Yeah, it's likely that it's going to be trending up.
And yeah, when people see their whole bill, there's no question.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of moving parts. My second question was, in March, when PG&E is raising their gen rates, and therefore we're going to follow with that raise, do we need another board action, or are we acting now to set our discount rate at 1%, and then in March it's just going to go up with PG&E?
I would imagine, well, there will be a new rate sheet that we will need to bring to you. The actual policy behind it, the 1%. I think we I'll ask Arish and council, but that the policy basically would be the same, but we would have to formalize the new rate sheet.
Okay, if it's required, it's required.
Yeah, and we can be timely in that because we'll be maintaining the same rate. We will, when we produce the actual rates, we'll present them just as soon as we have them to the board, as we will be doing this time. So in January, by the January board meeting, we will present the latest rates. It'll be a consent item, but that will be presented to you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Don, so bottom line, PG&E is going to move and we're just going to trail them 1% less. If they go up, we go up, but we're 1% less. So.
Yes, and remember, it's what we're seeing is a 2.5% down in January, followed by a 3.5% up.
I know.
And in March, there's a possibility they could combine those in March, which would be nice, but so far that's our understanding, is that it'll go down then up. And
rate consistency and stability like super matters to the citizens. I mean, to every individual. And I just got to say, our system in California of late has not generated stable rates. They seem like they change every 3 or 4 months, but we're always less than PG&E. So I think that's our bottom line message. Javed?
Thank you. I know there's 2 tier rates. One is the, and I don't know how you classify them, but one is carbon free completely, and one is a renewal carbon free, and we have 1% less on one of those rates. And the other rate, I think we're 0.8% ahead or something else. And I think our budget is probably getting where our revenue and expenses are now getting pretty close. You don't, I think it was like you're looking at $2 million additional income. So we had the luxury, well, Howard has been on the board for the last 4 years, where we've had plenty of reserves and a lot of revenue coming up. But is it time for us to put some financial structure so that we don't start losing money in the long run? Or, I mean, we're committed to the 1% discount rate. Will we be able to maintain that if these expenses and the PCI expenses keep going up? Do we need to look at that second tier rate that we have for, I guess that's a renewable greenhouse, to move that up and leave the 1% discount on the ones that are standard rates for everybody else, so that we can meet any challenge that might come up if our revenue falls short and we're starting to get to a place where we're going into the red. If you can comment on that.
So on the, we have Green Start, which is our standard rate, and we have Green Prime, which is our 100% renewable product. Very small percentage of our customers are on Green Prime, at least by load. About 2% of our load is on Green Prime. So principally, what we're talking about here is Green Start and that rate. Yeah, I think the next real view of this we're going to get is in the mid-year projections that are coming out. Of course, there's lots of moving parts, and then we're going to be watching the PCIA movement closely here over the next 12 to 24 months. Likely to be a more challenging time because we're catching up. We're paying off some previous PCIA debt, if you will, because of the cap that's been in effect.
So let me just add to that answer, Don. So Javed, I would expect the next 2 years to be challenging financially because of the PCIA. There's a catch-up provision on the PCIA where there's a cap that's been imposed. And so there's an under collection that PG&E gets to charge us in the next year. Now, in the longer run, we do have some expensive PG&E assets that are going to come off their books. The nuclear power plant is going to come off their books in the year 2024 and 2025, and some utility-owned generation is going to come off their books in 2023. So the long-term trend is for the PCIA to go down. However, in any one year, the actual PCIA rate is dependent on what market prices are for renewable resources, RA, and energy. So we'll continue to have fluctuations year to year, but the overall trend, the pot of dollars that PG&E is collecting their uneconomic costs, that's going down. So we'll continue to have volatility, but it's going to be going down. So, and that's the reason that we've been putting aside reserves, right? So that's one of the reasons. So when we go to rating agencies and we talk about our 5-year financial forecast, we're doing stress tests and showing that our reserves are healthy enough to absorb changes in the PCIA from a volatility standpoint.
I mean, you guys have done a great job of maintaining those reserves. I was just curious whether you need to do some extra additional marketing on the green renewable sector so that we have some additional revenue stream coming up for people who are buying those, and that may help you out further down the stream. So I'm sure you're looking at it. So that was just my thought, to monitor it closer, see if there's any margins there to pick up some additional revenue, so that we don't run into going into the red, if, you know, especially PG&E is controlling the PCI issues. That's all I have.
Thank you, Javed. I know going into the red is always scary, but I gotta say, we've actually been planning on being in the red since day one, but only temporarily so that we can weather storms and stuff that comes out of it. So don't freak out if you guys have to go red for a year, as long as there's a plan that shows how it's going to land. We honestly, Javed, we've been preparing for this since the very first meeting on the very first day. So Nisa and then John.
Thanks, Chair. So my question has to do with the 1% less than PG&E. And I completely understand from a marketing and a messaging perspective why we want to do that. And it's also good for our consumers to offer that lower rate. But I'm just curious whether or not we've measured the impact on, for example, the adoption rate. Like, do our customers really opt for SVCE because of this 1%? Have we gone, or are we doing it just, you know, we're able to say it's 1% less than PG&E. It's a good thing, but I'm just curious whether or not we measured the impact and if it's really making an impact. And I will remind you that a couple months ago, I was actually in the 2%, 3% camp when we were talking about going down from 4%. So I appreciate us doing it, but I'm just curious, are we doing something that's really having the right ROI?
Just per state law, just so everybody gets the beginning, everybody was opted in. They had to actively opt out. And the discussion when we started this less than PG&E was, if we cost more than PG&E, even if we were greener, that would give people an excuse to opt out, and it would give our naysayers a talking point to say, you're paying more for the same electrons. Why are you even doing it? So it's more than a marketing pitch. We kind of felt it was a very defensive pitch. As for data and all that, I got to get staff to figure an answer to that.
So yeah, do we have hard side-by-side data? No, but if we look at our history, we did run for our first, it was about 12 months on a 1% discount. So when we launched the organization, our initial value proposition, of course, was we're greener than PG&E, and we are competitively priced. And competitively priced meant we were just tucked in right underneath the PG&E rate. That was extremely important to some of our largest commercial customers, who tend to be rate savvy. I mean, they have facilities professionals whose job it is to get the best rate, and even 1% was something that motivated them to take a chance on a new organization like ours. So it was, that 1% was very important at that time. Of course, we've increased the discount since then, which our customers have been happy about. But I think we're wary of going to parity, or certainly going into a position where we would charge more than PG&E for some of the reasons that Chair Miller mentioned.
Thanks, Don.
Is that it, Nisa?
Yes, thank you.
All right, John?
So the first question I think is just a real quick one, and then a second one. First one being, since I'm new here, what I was hearing at the beginning is at the start of Silicon Valley Clean Energy, the target was 1%, but yet we've been running at 4%. Has it always been 4%, or at what point did it go from 1% to 4%, and now it's going to go back? So I can just kind of see that trend.
Visualize a ping pong ball. We've done 1%, we've done 6%, we've done 4%, but the value statement that the board always made was less than PG&E. And clearly we'd love to be half the price of PG&E, but reality gets in the way of that. I don't know if board remembers all the different rates and when we had them, but you'll spend a lot of time contemplating this very question.
Yeah, so if it really is that much fluctuation, what would you have, since 2016 until today, what would you say the average then has been over that time? 2%, 2.5%?
We have a wonderful chart we could share with you that shows exactly what that percentage has been month by month since inception. But yeah, we actually just put this together for one of our rating agency presentations. It's averaged very near 4% since inception. So for a while it went to 9%. I mean, it went way up, and part of the reason for that was some very extreme and sudden upward moves in PG&E's generation rate for a variety of reasons at the time, and so we lagged that a little bit, and then didn't want to pass that all through. We certainly were meeting our reserve contribution targets at the time, and so yeah, that's the balance that's typically been struck. Can we meet our reserve contribution targets, and can we provide a good deal to our customers? Over our history, that's averaged out around 4%, and we've seen a similar thing, for instance, with Peninsula Clean Energy immediately to our north. They've been in that same general ballpark. They have a policy, I believe, that's 5%.
Harish, you have the number of how much money our citizens have saved?
$69 million on bill savings so far. And I will send all the board members either tonight or tomorrow morning a table to show how much each of your cities has saved.
Excellent, excellent. John?
So one other question, and again, just kind of being new to this. Okay, so the current reduction in the discount rate, it sounds like it's really being driven by PG&E's fluctuation. And so just not to make it too complicated, but just so I have something to kind of indicate to me how it is. So PG&E's rate, if our rate is so closely tied to theirs, is the change in their rate, we had all these fires, and they wind up with lawsuits, and then there's just the standard cost to them for generating. Is it possible to give a kind of an indicator what is driving their fluctuation, or a significant one? Why would it go down in January by a couple percent only to go up in March by a greater amount? And so it doesn't need to be a complicated answer. Just give me an idea, because I have no idea why that fluctuation would occur.
The thing that really impacts our rate and that impacts the setting of our discount is the PCIA, which again is somewhat distinct from PG&E's generation rate, and that PCIA has moved up significantly over the past several years, as you've heard, and that's really the high order bit in terms of what's driving our need to adjust our rates. After that, the PG&E generation rate tends to change annually. So almost always you'll see a January 1st annual increase. And then once, sometimes twice during the year, certain policy or regulatory changes will affect a difference, generally a small difference in the rate. In the case of this year, the January 1st rate is just a New Year's rate, and that rate has had to go through a bunch of approval processes with the PUC and so forth. And so the rate is new as of January, and then it's actually some new regulatory developments related to insurance around wildfire, and that's what's affecting that rate in March. Again, there's a possibility they're going to combine those two things into one rate change, but we're seeing it as two at the moment.
You good, John? All right, Liz? Oops, you remuted yourself.
Again, sorry.
There you go.
So just to offer a few points to John, the PCIA is a fascinating thing to understand in principle. And then in fact, it's a black box. So you'll get the gist of what that is doing and why it's so problematic for us. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Don, one of the things about the 1% and then the 6% and whatever, the board was learning a lot and looking to balance building up reserve versus giving our customers the best. And you'll see some of our decisions over the early years in particular was trying to reach that balance. And then we addressed it, I believe correctly, I'm remembering correctly, that we finally clearly identified a minimum reserve, a desirable reserve, and then a high reserve. And once we had that parameter, it was easier to evaluate what we wanted to do with the rate. That's sort of our cushion understanding and helped a lot. So that's, from my understanding, gave me comfort as to why we were doing the parameters of why we were doing what we were doing and what we had to do to respond to the environment that PG&E was putting us into. And the fact that it's gone up so much now, there was a comment, and I'll just highlight that for your future and everyone's future reference. We're doing catch up. So there were points early on when the PCIA didn't go up that much, which allowed us to have more flexibility with our rates. And now that we're doing the catch up, it's more challenging.
Good. All right, let me go to the public quickly. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak on this item? If you wish to do so, please indicate your desire by raising your virtual hand, or if you're on the phone, pressing *9. And I think we have Bruce with us.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Terrific. So for the benefit of the new board members or board member, I just wanted to let you know that I am not as much of an energy nerd as Howard, but I have certainly spent a lot of time since I worked in the solar industry 8 or 10 years ago, trying to understand PG&E and its rates and how they change and how they compare to what CCAs are offering. So PG&E does not value rate stability. They change their rates 3 to 6 times a year. This year, 2020, they've changed their rates 6 times. And if you actually look at your PG&E bill, rather than just letting it be auto paid and shredding the paper, if you still get paper, you realize that it is such a complicated bill that almost no one really can tell why it changes from month to month. Seasonal changes swamp rate changes. And so what tends to get customers fired up is an exceptionally cold winter when they use more gas, or an exceptionally hot summer when their electricity, if they have air conditioning, their electricity bills go up. California has tiered energy rates for many people, where once you trip over the top of a tier, all of a sudden electricity gets much more expensive than it was at the lower tier. So all of these things conspire to make people simply say, I hate PG&E, but I don't understand why. There are 2 CCAs in the Bay Area that charge more for electricity than PG&E. They are the first 2, Marin Clean Energy and Sonoma Clean Power. It's my belief that they chose to charge more than PG&E because they had very ambitious goals related to renewable electricity supply. They're not as greenhouse gas free as Silicon Valley Clean Energy, but they are more renewable based on California's definition of what renewable energy is, which excludes hydro. So there are a lot of switching costs, and there's a lot of inertia involved once you have a customer, and being 1 or 2% more than PG&E probably would not cause a substantial reduction in the customer base. But as Don has pointed out in conversations with me over time, that doesn't necessarily apply to commercial customers who may have electricity bills that are tens of thousands of dollars a month. And so, 1% of that might be something that a facility manager would say, hey, I could get some brownie points on my next performance evaluation if I could shave that cost. So those are some thoughts about rates, and just wanted to make sure that everyone had a chance to think about those things. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Bruce. While there is an organization that's carbon-free Silicon Valley, there is not a organization that says Fossil Fuels United, but yet they do seem to show up at our council meetings when they are unhappy that we're trying to make the world greener. Am I right, Nisa? So yeah, why give them a reason? Anyway, any other questions or thoughts on this? Okay, no members of the public, no other questions for us. I think in our questions, we probably had most of the discussion. I welcome any further discussion and or a motion.
I'd make a motion.
Please.
Second.
And that would be to adopt resolution number 2020-42.
Thank you. I was just going to read it, but if that's sufficient.
That'll be sufficient, actually.
Thank you for that.
Unless you want to read it.
Thank you for all the words I'm now using. And I did want to say with the motion that I think has consistently done a very good job reviewing, paying attention to, and keeping the board apprised in advance of this kind of significant issue, the rates, and I'm appreciative of that. So I would move this resolution.
Second.
Thank you, Liz. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, I think I saw Margaret's hand go up first. Is that okay, Nisa? Okay, we'll give it to Margaret. Any other comments on this? This is one of the big things that we do every year, and I want to thank everybody for their thorough consideration on this. And we will get our clerk to do a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Chair Miller,
Aye.
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes.
Gibbons,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
Fliger,
Yes.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie,
Aye.
Elahi,
Aye.
Yulo,
Aye.
Abekoga,
Aye.
Ellenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries with Directors Tovar and Montano absent.
Okay, so next up is for us to approve our policy platform and identify the priorities for 2021. As everybody recalls, our legislative group is an ad hoc committee. And so we do need to give them different goals and objectives every year, or they would become a standing committee. And I think we got Milicia is going to do this one for us, right? There you are.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Great. So as Chair Miller said, we are recommending you approve the 2021 policy platform and also a renewal of the legislative and regulatory ad hoc committee. And I'm going to take these two in turn. So first, the policy platform. The purpose of the platform is to articulate our legislative and regulatory priorities for the 2021 legislative session and beyond, and to also allow staff to take positions on bills for SBCE without explicit board approval, as long as they're consistent with this platform. And more broadly, this is also used to guide our optimal use of our advocacy time and resources, both at the legislative and regulatory level. And so the policy areas are split into three broad areas. The first one is SBCE, customer welfare, and the CCA model. The second one is climate mitigation and clean energy technologies. And the third is California energy regulatory and market structures. And I'm going to go into more detail about each three. Next slide. So customer welfare and the CCA model. So this broadly just looks at the model and basically looks at the protecting our customers and the investments we make on behalf of our customers. And so the key areas here are related to PCA procurement autonomy, the right to set retail generation rates, cost shifts and customer indifference, and that includes PCIA. And it also includes issues such as direct access. Both are just hugely impactful to SBCE and CCAs generally. Non-bypassable charges are also included. And we've also included a new one, which is affordability and equity. As you know, this has been identified as a priority for SBCE. And so we thought it should be included in the platform as well. In terms of what's changed, in addition to including affordability and equity, we also removed the right to form a CCA. We feel like that issue, which was part of the 2020 platform, is not as at the forefront as some of these other issues that are to the left of this slide. And so at this moment in time, we've moved that as a priority. Next slide. So the next one is climate mitigation and clean energy technologies. And as you know, this is just core to our mission. And so the first one is grid resilience. So it's looking at resilience as it relates to wildfires, public safety power shutoffs. There's also the ability to invest in grid edge resources. So what we mean by that is, you know, all the various resources such as solar, storage, other distributed energy resources, and then fuel switching and electrification. And one of the key changes from last year is that we have called out distributed energy resources as a priority, but we felt that the ability to invest in grid edge resources basically encapsulates that. So there has been some consolidation of some of the platform issues last year into the issues this year. Next slide, please. So finally, we have California's energy regulatory and market structures. And this is looking at sort of the future of the energy market and how we can help influence that and advocate for that in a way that really is beneficial to CCAs and to SBCE. And so for this one, we have the creation and development towards an open access distribution platform. And what we mean by that is basically a platform that allows us increased visibility into the distribution grid so that DERs and other grid edge technologies can be fully incorporated into reliability and decarbonization planning. We also included CCAs as providers as last resort and sole providers, restructuring of investor-owned utilities, and residual central procurement where it improves system function. So this is related to reliability. And here the changes from last year are basically this idea of an open access platform has been added. We really do feel like this is important, especially when we're talking about deployment, widespread deployment of DERs. Direct access has been removed. And again, that's more of consolidation. We felt like that was part of cost shifts and customer indifference. And so that's been part of included there, but it remains a top priority for us. I really want to press upon that. And we also removed greenhouse gas accounting as well. So that's the policy platform. I'm going to stop there and then move on to the Legislative and Regulatory Ad Hoc Committee. Next slide. So the Ad Hoc Committee, the purpose of the Ad Hoc Committee is basically to address responses to industry transition. The Ad Hoc Committee was formed, it has been formed every year for the past couple of years. The last Ad Hoc Committee, which was formed last year and was running through 2020, sunsetted in September of 2020, as you know. And so we want to basically reform this committee. And we have these specific focus areas, which include expansion of direct access, reliability, planning and procurement, transparency and accountability in rate making. And again, that sort of involves PCIA, and public safety, power shutoffs, and wildfire prevention, cost and recovery. And one thing I do want to sort of note here in terms of the focus areas for the Ad Hoc Committee versus the policy platform, the policy platform is sort of a broader 20,000-foot level of our priorities. When we get to the Ad Hoc Committee, it goes down a few thousand feet to focus in and narrow in on the specific issues that we really want to advocate for within the committee. And what's changed here is that we did remove PG&E restructuring and reform because that specific proceeding has been closed. And we also removed centralization of resource procurement because we do feel like that's folded into reliability planning and procurement, though reliability planning and procurement encompasses a sort of a broader subset of issues. And so that's basically been added and sort of that issue has evolved. So in summary, basically we recommend that you both approve the policy platform and approve the renewal of the Ad Hoc Committee. And at this point, I will take any questions you have or any comments you have. Thank you.
All right. Anybody have any questions they want to pose on this? There are people on this board that are far more skilled in the policy place than I would ever be. So they probably will have comments when we come back. Let me check with the public. Oh no, Javed, go ahead.
Definitely not as skilled as you are, Howard. I just was looking at the platform that removed the greenhouse accounting, and I was curious as to what that was there for and what are we doing by removing it, if you can explain that to me.
So the greenhouse gas accounting, apparently in 2020, we had included it as an issue, basically saying that we would be supportive of any bills that basically quantified how we accounted for greenhouse gas reductions. And so it was basically included as an issue for the 2020 legislative session. We did not see that as a top priority for 2021. Given, a lot of emphasis right now on direct access, on PCIA, on reliability. So we basically removed it.
So I mean, are we doing our own greenhouse accounting? I mean, are we trying to say how much greenhouse we've saved or are we not?
I would have to defer to somebody else on the accounting that we do, but basically there have been bills in the past that have basically spoken to establishing a common metric in terms of greenhouse gas reduction. And so in 2020, basically what we had done is we said if bills did come up, we would be taking a position, basically a support position, that would allow for some quantification of that at this moment in time.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't really looking at it from the bill point of view. I was just looking at it from our own, what kind of benefit we were providing to society as to whether we are able to measure that as to what reduction we have done. That was one item. And the second item is there's a lot of carbon trading also out there. I guess you get paid for being able to absorb somebody's bad carbon. I'm trying to figure out if there's some revenue that we could generate at some point, since we are obviously carbon free and there's polluters out there who may want to sell us their carbon. This is just a 20,000 foot level thing that you may want to look at some point. And I don't know how that runs to our goal, whether we become a carbon entity when we start trading carbon and go away from, even though we're clean, and actually get some money for being able to do that. But that's a separate subject. I'm just trying to see, we're not giving up on doing our own accounting as to how much greenhouse gases we're saving.
No. We're not giving up on doing on our own accounting. This is just basically within the context of taking legislative action. Yeah.
This item is about the positions and the advocacy that we're going to make in the legislature and with the CPUC and with Cal ISO to generically address these specific sorts of issues. It's different than like exactly the operational stuff that we're doing, but we are so aware that we are dancing with elephants, and one wrong move we could get squished. And so it behooves us, and we actually invest pretty heavily in a legislative platform. And a lot of you all, again, are far more skilled in Sacramento than I am. But we do try to at least make sure they know what we are thinking. And that's kind of what this document is. This is what's top on our mind this year. Garish, I didn't know if you had something to add to that.
We'd be happy, Javed, to talk to you about how we account for carbon. And there are several protocols, including something called the carbon registry, and large customers use another platform. So we'd be happy to update you on that.
Thank you.
Rob?
I just wanted to add to that. My recollection is the reason we had that on the list was we were worried about, they were talking about some of the changes of, instead of us being carbon free, we would get a carbon content for the forming and shaping of the power. Maybe there was something about the off hours also that might get thrown in. If you brought power in from out of state, there was some, I'm forgetting all of it, the different reasons, but I think that was really why that was on that list was, a couple of years ago, we were looking into the future where they were changing a bunch of things on how, our carbon content label came out, and we wanted to be involved in that discussion. That was my recollection of why that was there.
Good.
Thank you for the history and context.
Yeah, some of it's interesting because you're new to the organization, and so
yes,
we briefly said all this last year, and there was a context. And I don't want to say this is very temporal, but it is. Every year there's different challenges, and we need to be. We're on the defensive. A lot of us feel, and we need to continue to defend ourselves, but there's also opportunity to go on the offensive as we move forward. Okay, let me run to the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on this item? If you wish to do so, please indicate that by raising your virtual hand, or if you're on the phone, press *9. And we have Bruce with us.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak again. So measuring GHGs is something that I care very much about, and I know that Silicon Valley Clean Energy does as well, because you can't bend the carbon curve if you're not gathering the data points that comprise the curve. And so perhaps this is not a Sacramento level thing that needs to be tracked, especially given how many other things are the focus of the legislative and regulatory team. But it's worth remembering, and perhaps I should say worth knowing, that PG&E is also 100% carbon free as of last year. And the reason that they can do that, while still buying a lot of electricity from gas-powered plants, is a legislative action that took place several years ago that allowed them essentially to say, well, we buy a lot more electricity than we sell, and so we can declare that what we're selling is all the green electricity and what we're dumping off to others is the dirty brown electricity. So that was a Sacramento decision that redounded to the benefit of PG&E and made SVCE's value proposition weaker than it would otherwise be. In particular, for SVCE, it would sure be nice to know what the greenhouse gas emissions are in the 12 cities in the county that comprise the service territory. And yet most of the cities don't measure their greenhouse gas emissions. It's not the emissions from electricity, since we've driven that to zero. It's the emissions from cars and buildings, landfill, and things like that. So SVCE is not going to be able to measure the carbon curve locally unless somebody is measuring and reporting all of those emissions. And as far as I know, SVCE has only calculated the emissions one time, and they shared it with the city councils and city managers, but not with the public. And so that lack of transparency is of concern to me. I hope there's not, in fact, a deprioritization in the gathering and reporting of statistics related to greenhouse gas emissions in our service territory. And this is going to become even more of an issue as cities begin to explore carbon offsets and other ways to reduce the net emissions as opposed to just reducing emissions. So for example, if you put a lot of trees in, can you somehow claim a credit in your community for doing that? Or on the other hand, if a bunch of trees burn up in a wildfire, do you have to account for the emissions from those burning trees? This is an important area, and I hope that the board will continue to pay attention to it.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you for being such a strong advocate. And thank you for your help in Saratoga to help us actually produce a climate action plan, which we approved at our last meeting. Any other member of the public that wish to comment on this? Seeing none, I will come back to us for discussion or motion, and we're going to start with Nancy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Miller. I think that this is a very thoughtful approach and clears the way for meaningful legislative action in 2021 as we start the beginning of the 2-year cycle. And I'm ready with a motion if there are no other questions from the board.
Liz's hand was up too. Liz, you had a question or comment?
I do actually. Thank you very much. I just wanted to take note of 2 things. One is I think the high level breakout of 1, 2, and 3 is very well done. I'd like to offer a thought on a more specific item that we might want to do. And it's based on the fact that, as was mentioned earlier, our previous board member is now Senator Dave Cortese of the 15th district. And he, on his very first day at the legislature, has introduced a building decarbonization package, and it is 3 bills. And short and sweet, it has to do with requiring states to be zero emission beginning in or by, let's see, achieved neutrality by 2035. It stipulates that states divest of non-zero emission projects by 2023. He has a second one that talks about requiring municipalities to update their general plans with policies to decarbonize their public buildings. And then finally, to do programs focused on decarbonization that is basically intended to support low-income utility customers. So I think the item number 1 on our big picture, affordability and equity, fits right in with that. And 2, fuel switching and electrification fits right into the packages. But I thought that we could add, and I'm looking for the, it says Staff recommends the following key policy areas. Topic of conversation only if people would be supportive. I'm wondering, since we now know that there is legislation on these topics, we might want to add something along the lines of furthering decarbonization of public buildings and support, second topic, support reduction in energy costs, particularly in low-income customers. Now, you may feel that's too specific, but I liked putting it in there because we know there's bills out there now.
More than bills out there, it probably helps our cause to immediately be backing our senator, who's the new guy on the block. And I think that's probably a worthy addition. Garish or anybody, don't let us make a mistake, but it seems logical from our perspective.
So let me ask Liz. Liz, on page 2 of the policy, we have affordability and equity.
Yes, I'm agreeing with that.
Right. So
I'm looking at the lower level ones. It's the key policy areas for 2021. And we've got.
Are you looking at the ad hoc committee, basically? That's sure.
Yeah, I'm reading the staff report right now. And it says staff recommends for the following key policy areas. So I assume that is what the committee would be looking at. Yes.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. So this is what the ad hoc committee is going to look at.
Yes.
Our legislative platform actually covers, I believe, what you're talking about.
Yes, very well.
So we could add affordability into this. So here's another thing, right? So I think we don't want to have so many things in the key policy areas that cover the entire legislative platform. So that's just something to keep in mind because it's an ad hoc committee and we want to focus on a subset. So when I look at this, we could easily add that item and still be okay. So maybe we add affordability and equity into the focus areas for the ad hoc committee.
So I'm looking for two separate items. And I appreciate I'm being specific, but I'm also very appreciative of what Howard expressed, which I wasn't quite comfortable saying, which is we know our local representative is in fact behind this. And I think it would be a good thing for us to have some kind of public statement. And he's specifically talking about decarbonizing public buildings. And I think and he's talking about putting in legislation to have cities decarbonize all of buildings. So it's a significant effort. And I think that's important. And then the other one, which may be covered okay in the big ones, but it's emphasizing the low income customers. He's looking for some way to decarbonize buildings that supports low income customers. In other words, he's saying that electrification is less costly for people.
So why don't I suggest we could add a couple of things to so the policy platform covers everything you're talking about.
Yes.
So you're talking about what the ad hoc committee's focus areas would be.
Right.
I would suggest we could add affordability and equity in there. That would take care of the low income. As far as the public buildings, I would suggest we add fuel switching and electrification because that's one of the things in there. So Chair Miller, if we could add fuel switching and electrification and affordability and equity, I think we would be good with that. And this will still be a subset of the entire policy platform. So I'm going to ask our general counsel if he's okay with that for the ad hoc committee.
Yes, that would be fine. I wouldn't add any more beyond this, but I think with those two, we should be fine.
I appreciate, but looking at a big picture.
Yeah, so let's look real big picture, right? These bills could be dead on arrival, right? He's the new kid on the block. I don't know if it's actually in our policy, but I am imagining that we have sort of a standing thought process that we are supporting anybody in Sacramento that's moving in our direction, which would include our own senator, but others as well, right? And that's not really a written policy, but that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, I think, Howard, maybe if I could clarify the distinction, the way I understand what Liz is saying. The platform would do everything you just said, which is supporting what our local legislators are asking for. It's what the ad hoc committee can discuss.
Right.
So we'll just add those 2 points to the ad hoc committee's agenda. And I think that gives, I think that's a good suggestion. And I think this is kind of a win-win, actually.
Okay. Are we good, Liz?
Yes, thank you very much for the discussion and the support.
Okay, and then we're coming back to Nancy.
Okay, so I move that the board adopt the policy platform for the purposes of the 3 policy areas, including the 3 policy areas for the purposes outlined in the staff report, and that we determine that our 2021 focus areas for the legislative and regulatory ad hoc commission or committee include expansion of direct access, reliability, planning and procurement, transparency and accountability in rate making, public safety, power shutoffs and wildfire prevention and cost recovery, affordability and equity, and finally fuel switching and electrification.
Perfect.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any other comments on this? Then I will go to our clerk for a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Chair Miller,
Aye.
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes.
Gibbons,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
Fliger,
Yes.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie,
Aye.
Elahi,
Aye.
Yulo,
Aye.
Abekoga,
Aye.
Ellenberg. Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries with Directors Tovar and Montano absent.
Excellent. I want to thank staff and I want to thank my fellow board members for bringing that one to closure. That's excellent. Next one is approval to participate in the California Community Power Joint Powers Authority, also known as Super JPA. So
Thank you, Chair Miller. General Counsel Greg Stepanisic and I are going to tag team on this. I think you may think you're on Groundhog Day because we've talked about this quite often at the board meeting, CEO report, and committees. We are now calling what we used to refer to as the Super JPA as California Community Power Agency. Next slide, please. We have 9 CCAs who are participating in this effort. Next slide. And the effort is to create basically a large procurement agency for the following business needs that you see listed on your left, on the left-hand side. Even though SVCE is a large agency, the power business and the utility business is kind of ginormous, and we do need to have economies of scale from time to time to take advantage of certain opportunities. So this actually adds to SVCE's options. We'll continue to do several things on the power procurement, risk management, and the program side. But there are opportunities where collaboration across CCAs bring us a lot of benefits. There are also strategic benefits from the regulatory side. We did make a presentation to CPUC staff, and they provided some very positive feedback as to the collaboration between CCAs, especially when California is looking to load-serving entities to procure a lot of resources, both renewable, carbon-free resources, but also reliability resources to keep the lights on. We also made a presentation to legislative staff, and we got a very similar positive reaction that we are working together to leverage size and take advantage of opportunities. So the first project that CC Power is contemplating is for long duration energy storage. As you know from the work that you have done, we have done on the integrated resource plan, as we move to a 100% carbon-free portfolio, long duration energy storage is something that the state needs. And we came together, and 8 CCAs have decided that we are going to do joint procurement on this. It's a technically complex area, and it also, we believe that economies of scale will be beneficial here. Next slide. So here's where I have come to you to talk to you about this issue, starting with updates through the CEO report. We've had 2 board meetings where we've discussed this, and we've also discussed this at the executive committee and the finance committee. Next slide. Here's the 8 CCAs who are now considering joining the CC Power. We have a tentative schedule as to when they are taking it to their boards and commissions. We have Marine Clean Energy, who has already had their this agreement approved by their board a couple of weeks ago. So my intention is, if the board does approve this, we will keep the board apprised of what we are doing with this CC Power. I expect to report back to you as part of my CEO report, telling you what went on at the meetings. These meetings are Brown Acted meetings, so they're open to the public. There will be a website where all the agendas will be posted, and I will also provide you an update after every meeting through the CEO report. Next slide. So with that, I will get to the recommendation, which is, my request is that you approve us joining CC Power, and both Greg and I are available for any further questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, so that is good. This is, we have gotten together on an ad hoc basis with the surrounding CCAs to enter into procurement agreements, which has given us more leverage and more buying power. This is more of a formalized structure to allow a large group of us to assert ourselves for larger sorts of projects and then share in the benefits. So it's super big thing that we're going to go off and do this. I was hoping to start with Nancy, and then we would do George. Nancy?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Miller. This is something that we have been talking about pretty much ever since our legislative ad hoc committee started. And I remember when we were on the executive committee meeting and Girish proposed the idea, there was some, I don't know, jocularity because we compared it to building our own amusement park. And, there were some various metaphors bandied about or how the JPA and the joint agreements would work, and various metaphors to help the executive committee understand it. This was all back in 2018, and staff has worked very hard with this, building a big coalition of ever more substantial and emerging CCAs that are serving their communities. And this is a really great opportunity. It does, it's what I would classify as fun with lawyers, because it is a collection of, JPAs. And together we have, once all of the CCAs adopt this, we will have a great deal of purchasing power. And there's been a lot of care put into it and thought put into it to protect and to provide guide rails and guardrails and bumper rails for managing this super JPA. So I think it's great. I think it's something that the CEOs of these CCAs can really raise the profile of, and the stretch the dollars further that we are raising from our ratepayers. So I really support this, and am happy to take part in this conversation, and I'm looking forward to seeing what questions and comments the other board members have.
Okay, great. So let's go George and then Javed.
All right, well, I'm not very good for questions. I just want to say that I very much appreciate the process we've used. The benefits seem very to me, and I feel like you've teed this up in a methodical way, Girish, and so I'm equally as in support as what I think I just heard from Nancy.
Okay, hopefully if anybody's got questions, now's the time for questions, and we'll get comments too. Javed?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a great proposition. We should be doing a super JPA and working together. While on the legislative committee or the finance committee, this came up, and I have one very, very serious concern. And the concern is whether the board is abdicating its responsibility to determine who represents it on this committee. Under the section 4.02, the CEO is the director that is appointed by virtue of this agreement. It's not us who is appointing them. It's the agreement who's appointing the CEO as the director. And if Girish promised to be here for 10 years, I would have no problem with it. But tomorrow we may have a CEO that we really don't want them representing us on this particular board. And we have no power whatsoever to nominate our own representative. Only the CEO gets to appoint a representative. He serves as a director, or she serves as a director. And if for some reason he or she can't serve, they get to appoint their designated representative. This board has the responsibility that if somebody is going to represent us, we should have the power to say, yeah, the CEO is always going to represent us. But if you're not happy with the way the CEO is representing us on this particular board, we can choose a different representative. We have no power to do that. And I think that's an abdication of the responsibility. I would propose that we accept the agreement as it is, but add a section which says, and specifically this says, if I can read that, each director shall the CEO or general manager or designee of the CEO or general manager of each member. I think that's way too broad. The representative could be a designee of chief executive officer or general member of each member, or could be unless a different designee is nominated by the board, because we need to have that power. Because I mean, I don't think it's enough to say, if you're not happy with the person who's representing us, we get rid of him. But the only way you get rid of him is you fire him as your president, as your director. And that's not an easy route to go. I mean, you've got labor agreements, you've got other issues to come up. And I don't think it should be such a drastic remedy that just to remove a representative that we don't like for some reason, or is incompetent, and we're just stuck with it. From at least this one little JPA, we should have the power to be able to designate our own representative. I don't think it's fair for us not to abdicate that power.
Do we have a question in there, Javed?
Yeah, my question, again, I don't know this question or comment time, it would be to have that particular change made where we have that power. Can we do that?
So Greg, that's probably a valid question in the context of, we have this agreement. If we change the agreement, does it still work within the context of these other organizations that are approving the same agreement?
Yeah, that will be the challenge just at this stage of the game. Again, this is a policy decision as to how the director, who should be the director representing our agency. But where we are right now, the agreement went through a long period of time of negotiation between the participating CCAs, and it is in final form. And it is already approved by MCE. So if we were to make this change, that is going to throw off the review process, and we don't know whether other entities would actually agree with this particular change. So definitely the schedule that's being proposed here would be lost.
Okay. I appreciate that, but I don't know if the other entities have considered it at that level, that they're also abdicating their power. And I think it'd be worth it for everybody to specifically address that particular issue and say, yeah, we don't want to.
We'll do discussion afterwards. Let's make sure we get all the questions on the table. Susan, your hand is up.
if it's the appropriate time, I wanted to follow up and offer maybe a different perspective from Javed, but if we're just doing questions right now, I don't have a question.
Yeah, this one, we went into the weeds right off. Everybody had comments, but I was hoping to get the questions flushed out first.
Cool.
If there are any questions, let's put them on the table now. Rob, are there questions or comments?
Yeah, let me ask a question of Girish. You know, it's really around, you know, disagreeing with Javed, because I feel that this is about staff executing on their IRP plan, and they need to be selecting the right people to go to this JPA, because it's, you know, there's technical issues to work out. So my question really would be for Girish to maybe expand upon how important it would be to have somebody appointed that knows what our IRP plan and what our purchasing plans are and so forth. If the board just selected somebody, we might be selecting somebody that's not connected into what's going on. So really the question is around expanding on the technical connection to what our staff is doing.
Thank you, Rob. So the first project that's being contemplated by CC Power is long duration energy storage. It is a very technically complex subject. And the PUC and the California Independent System Operator are both interested in this. It's part of the last IRP requirements that the PUC put forth. And as California moves into the future, this is going to get defined even more. So the technical aspects of this are quite complex. And when you think about how long it takes to even get RFP out. So for example, the long duration energy storage RFP, we started with an RFI in June of 20, let's say we started with an RFI in 2020, June. We expect to have this transaction consummated in September of 2021. So it's more than a year. So having continuity on this is very important. And the basic idea in this agency or this is it's procurement, and it's essentially implementing. Each of us are going to be using this JPA to implement what the CCA asks us to do, right? So this is essentially, we want long duration storage. We probably want additional solar storage, wind, and other products. We could do collaborative purchasing, and it is going to be quite technical.
And maybe a second follow-up question. So can whoever you designate go execute on purchases or agreements with this JPA without them coming back to the board for approval?
Not if it is more than $100,000. So you have given me, the only authority I have to spend money is limited to $100,000 for professional services. I can spend money for power purchases under 5 years, which is more than that, but for all other services, it's less than 100,000. So for example, on this first project on long duration storage, I cannot commit SVCE to anything. Because the nominal cost we're talking about in the tens of millions of dollars, I have to come back to SVCE to basically commit you to anything.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions at this time.
Thank you.
You're muted.
Howard, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to ask any questions. No, Susan, we're trying to stay on questions, but Susan, then Liz.
Well, and Ron's very clever and mostly just making his statement with a little question in there. I can probably do that too. To me, the proposal is concerning because it lacks the fundamental trust that I think is really critical in the relationship between the board and the CEO. we do have checks and balances, and Rob and Gary's just talked about one being the $100,000 contractual limit. And our role, as it is on any of the boards that we sit on, is to set policy, to hire, evaluate, oversee the executive, and to approve the budget, and not to do operational work. And what I'm understanding that Garish does as part of the big JPA is specifically operational and technical. And I do think I heard what you said, Javed, about it being complicated to fire somebody. We don't want such a drastic move to be our only option. But I think it's about the relationship building too, and it suggests it suggests that the decision for our appointee would be more political than technical. And certainly I may have misheard some of what you said, and I'm happy to be corrected, but it doesn't feel to me, given what I also know and understand about the history of this board and the relationship between board and staff, doesn't feel like it would be a good fit or a necessary piece to add in this situation.
I think you meant that was what is. So that was a question. Thank you for.
It was a Jeopardy style question.
Exactly. Liz, do you have?
Do you agree?
Yeah.
I'll hold for discussion.
Okay.
I'll let the other people speak. So I can.
We're going to come back. Okay, everybody.
Yeah.
Let me. There aren't any questions.
Thank you for your comments, Susan. I appreciate that.
Yeah, there aren't any questions at this moment, is what I finally concluded, since everybody's almost spoken. Let me run to the public, see if there's anybody who wants to comment on this item. If you wish to do so, please indicate that by raising your virtual hand, or if you're on the phone, that can be done by pressing *9. I'm seeing no members of the public, so I am going to come back to us. Now you don't have to phrase it in the form of a question. Let me make just a quick comment right off before we get into this one detail. Right, I am hopeful that everybody here agrees with the big concept, which is together with other CCAs, we will have more purchasing power, more capability, and access to parts of better projects than we would have on our own. So I think we're all in agreement on the compelling reason why we would do this. And there's one question on the table that we need to answer as policy group, which was Javed's question, which is, do we have a concern over how or who could get appointed to this? And with that, I got hands up, so I'm just going to go down the list in the order that hands have appeared. So we're going to go Nancy, then Liz, and then Tony.
Yeah, thank you. I am glad that Rob asked the questions in the way he did, and got to I think the crux of the matter. And to me, I appreciate very much Javed's diligence and concern for the agency. I think, Javed, to answer your question, I don't agree that that's necessary, because this is a constrained activity and it is highly technical, and the CEO would have to come to the board for approvals anyway. So I would maybe ask if the other board members are inclined to have similar concerns to Javed and want to take action, that there could be some consideration about policies and procedures on our board to make things transparent and to ensure that the CEO keep the board informed and keep things transparent. Like, for instance, every time the Super JPA meets, that the CEO gives an update about what's happening and report out to the board in a uniform and orderly manner. So I mean, I would prefer to handle it a different way if there's concerns like that. I do think that because it is IRPs, it is relating to joining our CCAs together for purchasing power, that I'm comfortable with the CEO or general manager or similar person to be the representative. So I would move staff recommendation and put a motion on the floor for that.
Okay, so Nancy's comments and a motion. Is there anybody who
Happy to
wants to
second
second? Who is that?
I'll second it.
Susan seconded, and then we're going to continue with the discussion, which would take us to Liz next, and then Tony, and then Javed.
So I'll try. I am supportive of as written, and I've been thinking since our previous discussion about the concern Javed voiced earlier at the executive committee. The lack of a better image, which I can't do in sports, I'm doing it in terms of music. A super JPA to me is like an orchestra. And we've got all these proposals and all these wonderful things coming together because we've been allowed to assemble the orchestra. But that's as far as it goes because Garish cannot do anything without this board. And if we want to take out the string quartet, because that's the only part of the orchestra we want, then that's what he will get permission from us to do. But because the entire group is assembled, there's a lot of flexibility on what we can do and what's cost effective and big picture. But we can be selective, and the board is the only authority that can be utilized to actually take advantage of what is available to us in the big picture. So I'm very comfortable that nothing will be stepped out of bounds. It is simply a structure that allows us to have the advantages of a big group and be selective within that.
Okay, that sounds good. Tony?
Briefly, I just want to say I am as excited as heck about this and the value to our organization and to the state as a whole that this represents, and our ability to combine our purchases to really make a difference. I think this just aligns so perfectly with what we're trying to do. And I'm so appreciative of the work that Garish and Greg and others have put in laying the foundation for this. I agree with most of the comments that have been made by my fellow board members, and I won't repeat them. I do appreciate you bringing this up, Javed, but I have to say I arrive at a completely different conclusion and think that the other organizations that we're going in with are going to want a high-level professional person representing all the agencies at these meetings in order to keep the conversation at that high level. And so therefore, I'll be supporting the motion as presented. I do want to ask Garish if he thinks it might be possible to, instead of including this in the CEO report directly, to having a line item on the agenda directly after the CEO report about the super JPA, just to make sure that it's not that you would ever do this, but the report doesn't get forgotten or lost, but that it's an item that's always on the agenda.
I'd be happy to do that, but I would suggest we put that on consent.
Is that okay, Tony? It would, at least it would always be there.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking it's just one notch above the CEO.
Yeah, having it as a
reports in terms of
separate item, I
accountability.
could have, yes, no problem in doing that. No problem at all.
Thanks, Tony. John?
Yeah, so my comment would be is, you know, I feel that this super GPA would really enhance our mission, where without it, I think we're going to kind of stay constrained based on our size. But with this, I think it opens up new opportunities. So I see it as being something that we want to be able to work with. but then I hear that there are some concerns, and so what I would tend to think is it might be good to revisit the concerns maybe after 6 months of having the JPA in place, and see if after it is working, after we do get some reports back, do we still have some concerns and we need to readjust a little bit, or pretty much maybe that it's working good the way it is? And so that would be the preference, give it a try with a possibility then to revisit concerns, or if there was enough in the way of concerns, then go ahead and explore and have staff report back with how they might address the concerns, and then be able to move forward. But I think I'm very supportive of this new advantage. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, John. And I put you off to the end, Javed, so you could have the last word.
I appreciate that, and I really appreciate all your comments. And I like the GPA. I mean, I think this is a great step there. You've done a lot of good work putting it together. I am just saying that the opinion of our board, the 13 members of our board, who selected such a great president to run this organization, we'll still have a board. Hopefully we won't be, we're not going to be as smart as we are now, because we're going to miss some of the key people that are on there right now. But at that point, we should still have that discretion that if for some reason we're not happy just by the representative who's representing us, that we should be able to appoint somebody else. This just totally takes that power away from us. I don't see an issue where we will appoint somebody horrible to run it, or it'll totally become a political decision, because there's 13 of us. We're not going to, the political decision is not going to happen. If we have a CEO we trust, at that point, we'll still rely upon his opinion as to who the representative should be, in case we want to switch that particular CEO. And I don't see how it takes anything away from us retaining that power as a appointed body that's required to run this organization, and just give it to somebody else. I mean, there's a saying, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I come from a country where the generals take over and then you can never get them back into the barracks. So
I don't, so Javed, help me understand this one part I don't get, right? Is if Javed, appointed his Uncle Lenny, right, to be the guy. I don't know if you have an Uncle Lenny, but if Garish appointed his Uncle Lenny and we didn't like that, wouldn't we just as a board go back to Garish and say, you got to do better? And wouldn't that solve the problem?
Yeah, but my concern is, if you got somebody who's appointing his Uncle Vinny, he's not going to come tell you that that's my uncle. You're never going to find out what's happening back in that JPA up there, because he's the only person who's reporting you, or she's the only person who's reporting to you. And if you do find out, by the time we find out, we won't have any power to do anything short of firing the guy. If we retain that power, we can say, at this point, there's 100 other things we need the president to do, and this one should be left alone. Let's designate somebody else. But why give up that power? And we're not going to. We hopefully never ever have to exercise it. But if you get an incompetent CEO who's doing incompetent stuff, which we find out eventually, then we're confronted with, oh, do we do anything with this guy or leave him alone? Because if we have to do something, we have to fire the guy, and then it becomes a very, very different choice. Now we have to give up a lot just to have somebody reappointed.
If we don't trust him, then we don't trust him. Back to Susie's point.
But does it have to be that extreme? It shouldn't be a life and death situation. It could be a gray area where he's not doing a good job representing us in the GP, or she's not doing a good job representing us in the GP. It could just be a very, very light gray area.
Then we would ask Garish to fix it, or whoever our CEO was. That's what I'm not understanding.
But that's the person who's not doing the right job. So how can we ask him to fix it?
Well, that's the point I think Susan made, is if they're not doing the right job, why are they our CEO?
Well, they're our CEO because we're stuck with them for employment reasons for a longer period of time. And because overall, the particular thing that's wrong, it's like, they've got a small pimple somewhere that we need to remove. We need to, don't give them entire coronavirus treatment. So we should have the ability to say, okay, we can just go and operate and take out this little pimple, rather than saying, no, this guy is messing up here. We need to remove him altogether.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I know how you guys are all feeling about it, and it's going to be hard to convince everybody. And my thought is, at least if this is going to go forward, have the other agencies fully consider this, because if you think about it, this has been negotiated by CEOs. So all the CEOs have been looking after their own interests in a way, if you can look at it, saying we get appointed, nobody can remove us, we designate whoever. So have the boards really considered that they're also all abdicating that particular authority, and whether it's worth it or not? I know our board has thought of it, and I think we're influenced by the fact we have a great CEO. And we're saying this guy could do nothing wrong, but I'm looking 10 years down the road. Girish is committed 10 years to me, I think. But the 11th year, you get somebody who's an idiot, then what do you do with it? That's what I'm looking at.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate all your comments. Thank you.
Nancy, you put your hand back up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Miller. I just have a real quick comment. To mitigate, I'm hoping, Board Member Elahi's concerns, these meetings will be public meetings under the Brown Act. So they will be open to scrutiny by any member of the public and the member of the board. And if there's any hint of issue, the board should be aware of it through their due diligence as board members. So, and then I think that the ability to hire and fire the executive of the organization falls to the board of directors. So I'll just leave it at that and state that there's I'm not concerned. In addition to any fiduciary responsibility above and beyond what we already have, I think it covers it does not, in my mind, disempower the board. So because it is a public meeting, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right. Would anybody object if we called the question? Seeing nothing, then we will go to our clerk for a roll call vote, please.
And with this motion, the board would be adopting resolution number 2020-43.
There was one addition. Let me make sure that this was part of it, which was that we would get a report that could be on the consent calendar about the ongoing activities of the Super JPA. Now, who made our motion? Was that acceptable? Nancy, is that okay?
Yes.
And then Susan, you were the second.
Yes.
So our motion includes the resolution plus the reporting requirement. Okay, and with that, we'll get our clerk to call the question.
Thank you. Chair Miller,
Aye.
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes.
Gibbons,
Yes.
Willie,
Aye.
Flagger,
Yes.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie,
Aye.
Elahi,
No.
Yulo,
Aye.
Abekoga,
Aye.
Ellenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries with Directors Tovar and Montano absent.
Thank you guys for a hearty debate, and thank you staff who's worked for months to bring this Super JPA to this point of formation. We have high expectations. Okay.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
May I make a second motion relating to this item?
Please.
I would move that we ask staff to agendize a 6-month review on how this is working. I didn't want to make the approval conditioned on a 6-month review, but I did want to respect Mr. Willie's request.
I worry that given the formation, and I'll have to look at John on this, that 6 months is probably too soon to report anything, because we'll be one of the early CCAs to even approve this. I'll bet the others don't get it approved until January, and we start doing stuff. I mean, we'll be back in May and hardly anything will have happened. Might a year be a better time frame? I'm good with 6 months, but I just think you might not have much to discuss.
I'm seeing him nodding. I'm happy to amend my motion to be a year check-in.
Does Susan have a thought on that?
Is that in addition to this showing up on a on a monthly agenda, we could always pull it off of consent.
I know.
Is it
Yeah,
something different?
you're absolutely correct, Susan. And we have that ability, but I think when we look at the report on a monthly basis,
Mhm.
we're looking at things and not kind of pondering our involvement as an existential question. And since Mr. Willie suggested it, I thought it was a fine idea. And if he's nodded his head to Howard's suggestion of a year, so I'm just saying, let's agendize for next December an evaluation.
We could be existential in a year.
Is that a second then, Susan?
I'll second that, sure.
Okay, so Grish's hand is up, so let me start with Grish and then we'll ask Nancy to speak.
It would be useful to get some clarification on what exactly we would be coming back with. What question would we be answering, or what would we be agendizing? Because I think the concern that was raised in the previous discussion was more on a trust kind of issue. So it'll be useful to find out what exactly the board would like us to do a year from today.
My understanding of what I seconded was that it would essentially be a review of the first year of operation, and anything that was reported to us that we had concerns about would be able to be discussed in that time. I did not, and Tony, definitely correct me if this isn't what you intended, but I didn't hear it to be a review of the specific question about assigning an alternate.
Correct. That was not my intention.
Thank you for the clarification. I think if it's a review of 1 year of operations, so I think, yeah, you'll be getting monthly reports, as we have a meeting, I'll report out. So if it's looking back at an entire year of operations, I understand what that is. And thank you.
Okay, I got Nancy and then John.
Yeah, so I'm glad you understand what a year of operation is, because I'm not sure I do. Because you had reported that it wouldn't be operational for another, year at least, that there'd be quite a bit of work to do. So do you mean, I would like some clarification on if this motion is once the Super JPA is up and running, is it a year after that, which would be roughly 2 years from now, or will there be operations starting sooner than that?
The intent of the motion is next December.
If I may clarify.
Yeah, please do.
Clarify, Nancy, the CC Power will get formed in February. So the agency itself will be alive in February. The first transaction would be entered into somewhere at Q3, Q4. So I see it's basically, us coming back in 2021 and just saying, well, we've met, we expect to meet quarterly. We've met quarterly. Here's the project, here's the budget, here's how much we spent. It'll be that kind of thing. It'll just be a summary essentially of the month, not the monthly, it'll be the summary of the reports I would have placed on consent calendar over the calendar year. And it'll be agendized for the December 2021 meeting.
Okay, so it's more operational than reviewing the transactions.
Yeah, it's possible the transaction may come to you in September, October, in which case that'll be part of that too. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It guarantees the board that it's on an item for discussion. So, John and then Margaret.
Yeah, actually, the comments have just kind of really, I think, helped define what I was originally kind of indicating. On the monthly basis, I would hesitate that we, kind of talk about structural issues as opposed to we just get the update on, whatever project is being proposed and two-way dialogue on that. again, not being the structural. So I did like that last comment where, you know, the meeting after a year's worth of being up and running, or year and a half, 2 years seems a bit long, but being operational as opposed to transactional. And with that kind of thinking, to me, it really frees us up on the monthly basis to listen to the update without thinking that, you know, gee whiz, we want to talk about structural, which is something that is going to be, you know, have input from many more of us board members. And if we just kind of know that we will do that type of a review, probably there's not going to be anything that really happens during that first year that would necessitate us taking some other type of action, and just waiting, you know, for that year's review and then saying, how well is it running? Is there anything else that we might suggest to help it run easier, help it, you know, do things quicker, whatever that might be. And it just kind of frees us up, you know, in all those monthly meetings. And so, yeah, I'll leave it at that, but I kind of like it. Thank you, Tony, for kind of carrying the ball down the field.
Thank you, John. Margaret?
Thank you. I appreciate the comments, and certainly as we get something started, I know we want to keep a close eye to it. I guess my concern is more that I guess it's, to me, I'm thinking it maybe there's a lot, might be a lot of repetition, and I just don't know if it's the best use of time to be frank. My thought was that we do a evaluation of the CEO every year, and part of that is a self-evaluation summary that the CEO presents to the board. And so I would expect, I don't want to assume anything, but I would expect this to be a major project of the CEO. And so perhaps that would be the opportunity to, he would include it, he or she down the road would include it as part of that self-evaluation. And if there are concerns, that, that whole process is an opportunity to have a real frank and open discussion on any concerns that there may be. So I actually would prefer not to put so much, reporting requirements. And my question too is, some of the transactional, activities. I don't know how much of it should even be public, frankly, if these are like business dealings. I don't know how much you can even really share with us in public. So I want to protect that confidentiality and the business transaction piece to it, so that they, our CEO has the ability and freedom to make the right decisions from a business perspective. So I would, entertain thoughts, or if there's any response to that. And would I even ask curious what you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a good practice for the CEO to report out on what's going on in this JPA, especially since it's new. It's something that 8 of us are doing together for the first time. And we can always change it, right? But I really think it's good practice. So I think, this trust comes from sharing information transparently. So I think it's very good to do this. Just my experience in working with JPAs. I worked with JPAs with general managers on the board and elected officials on the board, like the one that I belong to now. And I think the more communication we have with the board on this, it's better. So I completely support the motion to provide a report on consent. I think this is all learning. We don't know. I think having something in December 2021, it's not going to hurt us. So I think the definition that, hey, it's just operational, just review it. It's a time for us to chat about it. If we could come to December 2021, it'll be a big ho-hum. It's like, why are we even talking about this? So, but I think it's good practice for us to just have it on the books. And, I expect it'll be a few years before this becomes kind of systemized, and we're just used to it. So in the beginning stages, there's no harm. In fact, I would really encourage this to be good practice.
Great. Well, fair enough, Ben. I'll support it. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about this. I will point out, everybody knows this, right? We're represented by Garish or others in other multi-party agreements, other negotiations, a Cal CCA. I mean, we're already doing all of these things already, right? And we're not asking for special reports, extra oversight. We're not worried that Garish can appoint somebody to attend the Cal CCA meeting. We're not worried who's going to be negotiating which multi-CCA party agreement. This one stands out because we're formalizing a JPA agreement first. But I will point out, on all the other ones, we've never even discussed who was representing us in which negotiation with which collection of CCAs. We get our updates from the CEO, and if there's anything that seems off, we ask, and I'm assuming these will be the same thing. And with that, I think we're just going to call the question on this motion for an update in December. If we could get our clerk to do a roll call vote, please.
Yes, thank you. Chair Miller,
Aye.
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes.
Gibbons,
Aye.
Willie,
Aye.
Fliger,
Yes.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie,
Aye.
Elahi,
Aye.
Yulo,
Aye.
Abekoga,
Aye.
Ellenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously with Directors Tovar and Montano absent.
All right, thank you guys for that. We double check there's no third motion we want to entertain. And we're going to move forward to the next one, which is to approve a policy for dealing with potential circumstances where we are absent both the chair and a vice chair.
Thank you, Chair Miller. Good evening, directors. So as we're all aware, our chair and vice chair will not be joining us in our January 2021 meeting. And so the purpose of this item is to discuss the method for the selection of an interim chair in events such as next month, by way of approving the General and Administrative Policy number 6, which is up for your consideration. So the chair and vice chair vacancy is a topic that was brought up briefly at last month's meeting. So we brought this to the executive committee to discuss in November. And upon discussion, we discovered that this is not a one-off thing. This is something that is likely to occur in the future, where it be either at our committee meetings or our board level. So the development of a policy needed to be made. So with the direction from our executive committee, staff has developed a policy. Again, this is the recommendation from the executive committee in addition to consulting with our legal counsel. And this describes the method in which we would select the interim chair. And in a nutshell, this is taken specifically from the policy itself, but if there is no chair and vice chair present, the previous chair of that body would serve as the interim chair. And if that person is not present either, the longest serving member of that body would serve as the interim chair for that particular meeting. And if this is a brand new meeting, then members will draw lots to determine who would serve in that capacity until either a chair or vice chair is selected for that particular committee, or they are present at the next meeting. This policy addresses both chair and vice chair absences or vacancies if we don't have a chair or vice chair in place, in addition to the method in which to identify the interim chair. And so for your consideration is the approval of our General and Administrative Policy number 6, which is the chair and vice chair vacancy policy. If approved, this will go into effect for our next board meeting in January. And in addition to that, we will be adding similar language to our operating rules and regulations, which will come to you in January for approval. And that concludes the presentation, and I am happy to address any questions.
Okay, I don't know if anybody's got any questions. This may not even come to fruition in January because I'm going to take my case to the Supreme Court to overturn the election in Sunnyvale because it impacts Saratoga so extremely. And so Nancy may still be with us in January. Now, does anybody have any questions?
Well, you need 17 attorney generals to go with you.
No, I just need 17 other cities. The whole reason this came up, right? We all are thinking about how governance and transitions work. And it just dawned on us, wait a minute, we have this weird gap. And it's not that you guys wouldn't sort it out, but it just makes it a lot easier if there's a written policy.
So
Does anybody have any questions?
If nobody has questions, I'll move to adopt the.
Okay, so Javed's moved. We have a second. Let me check with the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on this item? If you wish to do so, please indicate by raising your virtual hand, or if you're on the phone by pressing *9. Seeing none. Any comments from anyone? Then let's get a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Chair Miller,
Aye.
Vice Chair Smith,
Aye.
Gibbons,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
Flagger,
Yes.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie,
Aye.
Elahi,
Aye.
Yulo,
Aye.
ebecca,
Aye.
Ellenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously with Directors Tovar and Montano absent.
All right, thank you to my fellow board members for that. And the last item is an informational item, which is about 2021 SV board elections.
Yes, thank you, Chair. All right, so the purpose of this is to give you the process and timeline for our appointments of the chair, vice chair, and committees, which will be coming to us in January and February. The proposed process, which was also presented to our executive committee last month, is to, following this presentation, this Friday, I will be sending out an email correspondence pretty much with all of the information that I'm giving to you tonight, but you're getting a first look for those that are not here. So I'll email out something with a call for letters for those of you who are interested in serving as our chair or vice chair in 2021. Also, for our January meeting, we will be focusing on our executive committee. So for those who are interested in serving on our executive committee, I would also be requesting your responses. I will be distributing a committee matrix worksheet that was included in your packets, which lists all of our committees on it in addition to some details, and I have a screenshot of that later in the presentation. And I would be distributing that following our January board meeting after we've made some selections. And those assignments would then be made at our February Board of Directors meeting. So here is a overview of the timeline. So again, here we are today, giving this as an informational item. I will be emailing you all some instruction this Friday. We are requesting that the chair and vice chair letters of interest, in addition to any interested parties, to inform me for the executive committee by January 4th, which is the Monday following our holiday. We will then make appointments for the chair, vice chair, and executive committee members at our January board meeting. Following that board meeting, similarly to what I'll be doing this Friday, I'll be sending out some information on that Friday about our additional committees, including the one that we have approved this evening for the legislative and regulatory policy. And February 1st, we would make those committee assignments. Or excuse me, the February 1st is when the committee matrix is due, and February 10th at our board meeting, we would be making those assignments. So this is our worksheet. As you'll see here, we have the description to the left, meeting details in addition to the current roster. So this will be you'll be able to identify how many slots we would have open if our members did not want to return. So this is something that I would be mailing out in January. And that concludes the presentation. And if you have any questions about our assignments or what's to come, I'm happy to answer them.
It's an informational item. Does anyone have any questions? Let me check with, go ahead, Liz.
I was just going to say, it might be helpful if the packet included, and you may already be doing it. You can be on 2 committees, whatever our policy is about how many committees people can be on.
I'll include that information as well.
Thank you.
Tony?
I note that the executive committee specifies a meeting time, but I would think that the members, if once chosen, could change that. And wouldn't want that. If someone wasn't available at that time, I didn't want it to dissuade them from applying.
Yes, thank you. That is correct. That time can change depending on availability of the members.
Any other questions? Let me check with the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on this item? If you wish to do so, please indicate that by raising your virtual hand or by pressing *9. Seeing none, since I think they're pretty much all staff members, though staff could comment if they wanted. I'll come back to us. This was an informational item. Does anybody have any final comments on that? Seeing none, then we're going to move on to board member announcements and or direction for future agenda items. Does anyone have anything they wish to contribute at this time? Liz? I think you're on mute.
We'll get it right one of these days. I wanted to make sure that before we adjourn the meeting this evening, we give all of our board members a round of applause with your mics unmuted. Full round of applause for all of those who are leaving us this evening with great appreciation.
Give him a standing ovation. I think I'm going to stand up. Good job.
Well done.
Any other thoughts or comments?
I have one, and
Please.
it's really directed towards you, Howard. And people earlier tonight thanked you for your years of service and your expertise, but I just want to compliment you on running the meetings and how deftly you rapidly adopted the Zoom, all the ins and outs of it. And I won't say this in a recorded meeting. Oh wait, this is recorded. You've done a much better job than many other elected officials who shall remain nameless. So I really want to acknowledge you. You did a great job.
Thank you. It is a little known fact, right? I do know a little bit about how Zoom works, not just because the CEO is a resident of Saratoga, and not because I had to write to the Speaker of the House saying that Zoom wasn't a Chinese company, which I did. I know some stuff about this, but the staff here adopted Zoom, and we actually got together and had training meetings, including a hackathon, to allow people to try and hack into our Zoom meetings and shut us down. So Silicon Valley Clean Energy in our true form went from this is necessary to being the best in the Valley overnight, because everybody's willing to turn on a dime and make it happen. And so thank you to Grish. And Nick is, I don't know if Nick's on this, but thank you, Nick, for being the guy behind the scenes who keeps everything clean and straight. And to the rest of the staff who's ready to hit the mute button if somebody rogue should show up and talk about dirty energy. Anyway, thank you, Tony. Let me just make my final outgoing comments, right? I have been interested in clean energy since I was a little kid, and my mom took me up to the Lick Observatory, and I saw my first solar cell at age 7 or 8. And I thought, man, this is amazing. You get free electricity from the sun. And what could be better? When I was 17, my mom shot me down on the 400-gallon water tank I wanted to build in her garage out of plexiglass that I was going to preheat with a handmade solar collector on the roof. But finally in my life, it came full circle, and I did get to work with a bunch of super smart, dedicated professionals who are doing this for real. And I don't want anybody to walk away thinking that we have not changed the world. We actually have. And I'm going to put them out again. First CCA to go carbon free. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Rod, who worked on that. One of the first CCAs to go solar plus storage. And thank you for Rob Rennie, who was always on the we got to fix the duck curve. And, I want to thank staff. I want to thank everybody else, because every meeting we show up, I get to say, we're trying to change the world. Who would have thought that we could get almost every city to adopt reach codes? And even Saratoga went beyond just putting some electric outlets in, and we banned it for space heating and water heating. And that's a miracle in my city. And so I want to thank everybody for making this the experience of a lifetime for me. And I will miss each and every one of you dearly. And I'm really going to miss my source of those refrigerated bags. Please send me one if you get a minute, Chris. And with that, I think we're going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you guys, one and all. Have a safe evening and a safe holiday.